Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, which today is Bridgestone Arena, right here where the Predators are getting set to take on the Florida Panthers tonight. I actually am excited. I'm going to the game. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So we had a great weekend of football. I mean, again, these weren't all barn burners. We did have two, including the really good Bills-Chiefs game yesterday. But I don't know about you guys, but I have just been, again, following this Titans coaching search, waiting for the latest to come in. I've got it now on Twitter where I get a notification anytime Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, or Diana Rossini sends out a tweet, which kind of pissed me off yesterday because as I'm sitting there watching the game, as Baker's trying to lead the Buccaneers back, right before he threw the final interception, I got a tweet. I stream TV, so I'm like 20 minutes or 20 seconds, 30 seconds behind. So as it comes up, Adam Schefter tweets out, the NFC Championship game is set, and it pops up to my phone. I'm like, oh, thanks. I bet Baker throws a pick on this play. Interception, and so that, kind of sucked. But other than that, we've been following the Titans coaching search, and today, the Titans threw us for a massive loop. So on Friday, the Titans had their virtual Aaron Glenn interview, which was expected. Then, yesterday, the Titans had their David Shaw in-person Rooney Rule interview, which was as expected. It had already been reported. We were told it was going to happen. The Titans are not hiring David Shaw, the old Stanford coach, to be the next coach of the Titans. And what I hate about this is I feel so dirty talking about these Rooney Rule interviews and being like, oh yeah, that's a Rooney Rule interview. I feel so wrong for saying it. But again, this is strategizing just like all of this stuff is strategizing, right? So again, I don't want to sit here and say like, oh yeah, that guy's not qualified for the job. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying being realistic here. They are not going to hire David Shaw, the Stanford coach, as their next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Then we all knew about the second Brian Callahan interview, which, as expected, is taking place today. So no curveballs up into this point. And then, boom, Cameron Wolfe of the NFL Network reported that Thomas Brown, the Panthers' offensive coordinator, is going to interview in person for a second interview. Now, I saw that, and I was like, okay, everybody prepare yourself. With the Preds game being on a Monday instead of a Tuesday, Barry Trotz is going to join us at 5 o'clock today. And I was like, there could be a Titans coaching announcement at 5 o'clock today with Barry Trotz sitting right here. And so I'm mentally preparing for that, thinking, okay, Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator of the Panthers, who as of this morning, when Cameron Wolfe sent that out, I thought had 0% chance of getting this job. He should have a 0% chance of getting this job because, again, he's got that Panther stink on him. He needs to go somewhere else, rebound the reputation, and then the Titans, if they had a job opening or anybody else in the league, there's 7 of these on average a year, then he could get hired for a head job. But I'm not taking a guy who's been offensive coordinator for 1 year, called the plays for half of them, and it be an unmitigated disaster. So when I saw that, I figured, okay, that's the second Rooney Rule interview. Again, the Rooney Rule, 2 external in-person minority candidates as it has been explained to me. Joe this morning texted me. He pulled up, I guess, like the NFL's website that said you only needed 1. But every person I've talked to in the league, and I looked at Joe's, employer, The Athletic, I looked at their site, and it said 2 external in-person minority candidates for the Rooney Rule. So I just assumed that's what the Thomas Brown interview was. Again, I can't take Thomas Brown seriously as a head coaching candidate. So I figured, okay, they've got an in-person with Callahan. Callahan has taken all these interviews. He's the guy that it seems to be. There are a lot of teams that teams want to go ahead and get their guy. They don't want to wait so they can get their coaching staff filled. So I'm like, okay. They're going to interview Callahan today. They're going to interview Thomas Brown. And then they're going to name Callahan the head coach. At that point, when I saw that, I thought, okay, here we go. Then Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero of NFL Network say that Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, will get a second in-person interview on Wednesday. So that means it is highly unlikely that the Titans will hire a coach before they do the second in-person interview with Dan Quinn. So what does all of this mean? The first thing that this could mean, and again, I have no idea. I have no inside sourcing. I'm just trying to follow the tea leaves. So the first thing this could actually mean is that the Titans are truly running a legitimate coaching search. Right? Hey, we figured it wasn't going in the right direction with Mike Vrabel. Let's open it up. Let's see who the best candidate is that's out there. I feel like that almost never happens, not just in the NFL, but really with a lot of things in life. A lot of jobs. Job opens up. They call in about the job. Oh yeah, no, we've already figured out where we're going, and that's what all these agents and back channels and that's what all that's for. And then again, the idea that the Titans would fire Mike Vrabel and then have a wide open search, bring in candidates, take the time to interview them, go over the pros, go over the cons, really discuss it. Well, that's what somebody who's logical would do. And if there's anything we've learned about the Titans when it comes to coaching searches and everything else, it is that they are illogical, right? Mike Vrabel was a hand-picked candidate. When they fired Mike Mularkey, they interviewed 3 people. Matt LaFleur, who they were interviewing to basically be the OC, Steve Wilkes, who was a Rooney Rule candidate, and Mike Vrabel. When they interviewed all those coaches before they hired Mike Mularkey, everybody and their grandma knew that Mike Mularkey was getting the job. Now, I can't tell you what happened on the Ken Whisenhunt thing other than I was told by the late, great Mark Howard. I was told that Tommy Smith hired Ken Whisenhunt before he ever met him. That apparently they were negotiating a potential deal with Whisenhunt, and then the idea was, well, he's going to get on the plane and he's going to go to the Lions if you don't give us that 5th year. So they said, okay, fine, we'll do it. Again, not logical. So the Titans, in my lifetime, since they moved to town, I don't think they've ever run a legitimate, logical coaching search. Jeff Fisher leaves, they just promote Mike Munchak, who the owner loved. That probably was going to happen the whole time. So that's the first thing. They might actually be running a legitimate search. It's just hard to believe because the Titans don't normally do that. And then I was thinking, like, okay, could Brian Callahan be interviewing for the head coaching job, and then Thomas Brown be really interviewing for the offensive coordinator job, kind of like Matt LaFleur, where it's like, well, we can't interview him until the Panthers hire a head coach, and then the Panthers fire him as offensive coordinator. So what we're going to do is we're going to interview him as head coach. It's going to check the box of the Rooney Rule, and then because he runs that Rams system, and Callahan comes from Zach Taylor, then we'll turn around and say, okay, you're going to be our offensive coordinator? I mean, I guess, but then what about Dan Quinn? Like, what's the point of bringing Dan Quinn in for a second interview? Unless the Titans are trying to gather information that Dan Quinn might have about who to put on his staff. But again, that's like, there's all these rabbit holes now. I'm trying to figure out what is going on here. And when it comes to the Titans search, every day I seem to think one thing. The Titans do something that makes me think another thing. I thought Bobby Slowick was going to be the guy, especially given the fact that he's the offensive coordinator of the Texans, who have a quarterback that everybody probably should be worried is going to dominate this division for the next 15 years, with the hope being that taking that coordinator away from that quarterback will make him worse and make your young quarterback better. And we know that the Titans ownership is not fond of Houston, and the opportunity to really take from Houston would probably make their day. But They interviewed him, and I haven't heard that there's a second interview to follow, so I guess that's out. Then I thought, okay, once they decided they were going to interview David Shaw on Friday, it was announced they interviewed him yesterday, but once it was announced on Friday they were going to interview David Shaw, I'm like, all right, they're probably zeroing in on one of these offensive coordinator candidates, Callahan, Slowick, whatever. They did their interviews. They said, okay, we know who we want to hire. So let's go forward. Let's get all of our ducks in a row. Let's make this. But then the Dan Quinn thing comes up, and it's like, wait a minute. What's going on there? And then the second interviews, right? Callahan got one. Quinn got one. Brown got one. Are those the only three finalists for the job? So this is where we are on the Titans coaching search, which is, man, I don't know if I feel a direction. I woke up this morning, and again, I left out the whole thing Friday, where Aaron Glenn was asked at the press conference on Thursday about what's important in order to be a head coach, and he talked about collaborating with the owner and the general manager, and I thought, oh, God, he's going to be the next coach of the Titans, and a leader of men, and all the things that, again, in today's era just don't matter as much. And so I thought that on Friday, and now I'm feeling another way today. So either the Titans are running an organized, sophisticated, thorough coaching search, which I would prefer, but again, do you fire Mike Vrabel? And I'm not the biggest Mike Vrabel fan in the world. You all know that. I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's the greatest coach. Do you fire Mike Vrabel if you don't have any clue as to who your next coach is going to be? I mean, I don't think you do. So where are we on all of this? And I don't know the answer. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in on the Titans coaching search, where we are, how we got here, where they go from here. And again, I like to, I don't want to say I like to act like I'm smart, but there are times where I sit back here and I'm like, okay, where do I think this is headed? And I can kind of, oh, this was leaked to this person, which means it probably came from that person, and then this was said to this. There's nothing. I don't know what the Titans are thinking. Dan Quinn? Again, Dan Quinn. Maybe they will hire him as that. I don't know. 615-737-1025. There was one thing that I gained from this divisional round weekend that is incredibly apparent to me. And it's something that, again, the Titans have got to understand this. And I don't know if they do. I'm not sure if they do. Honestly, I don't think they do. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
This job, this next head coach, absolutely has to have a plan for Will Levis. You're a defensive guy, you better be talking up somebody like a Liam Cohen or somebody along those lines, because Will Levis, to me, and you know, I'm a Jeffrey Simmons advocate. Will Levis is the most important player. Number 8 is number 1 in the program. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's the most important player. His success will catapult this team to being competitive. If he doesn't succeed, man, it's going to be tough for a lot of people around here in Nashville. So it's of the utmost importance to have a plan for him. It's of the utmost importance to be able to continue to develop him. And it's of the utmost importance to surround him with talent.
TD, and I don't disagree with anything that he just said right there about how clearly the single most important thing for the Titans is what happens with Will Levis. Developing Will Levis. And that was the one thing that I gleaned from this weekend. You know, the games were fun to watch, even though it got out of hand in the Baltimore game. And then after the Baltimore game, we had that crazy ending to the Green Bay game, which was great. And then we had a game, you know, that I never felt like Tampa Bay was going to win, but at least was competitive. And then, of course, the Chiefs-Bills game. And the one thing I gleaned as far as the Titans are concerned, the Titans coaching staff is concerned, everything else is not, oh, wow, did you see Mike McDonald's defense? Oh, wow, did you see some of those play calls that were run by Dave Canales? I mean, my goodness, did you see this? Did you see? None of that. It was Will Levis is probably going to be Baker Mayfield if the Titans do not find him an elite coach right now. This is like anything, right? Developing a quarterback, raising a quarterback. You have to nurture that young quarterback from the beginning. And look, it's okay to have 1 year with a bad coach. Jared Goff had Jeff Fisher, and then they immediately got it right when it came to Sean McVay. But I'm watching Baker Mayfield with the Buccaneers. And I think we can all agree that Baker Mayfield is not some bum. But he's also not Lamar Jackson. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not an elite quarterback, and he's not ever going to be one. Baker's good. Baker has talent. Baker is actually smart. Baker plays fearless. Baker gets hurt. Baker turns the ball over too much. That's it. I mean, if you go back to Baker's career, Baker had a great rookie season. I mean, everybody thought 2018 Baker Mayfield was the next great quarterback. He had a year, the way people talked about him after his rookie year is the way people talk about C.J. Stroud now. That's how good Baker was. So what do the Browns do? They do the absolute worst thing you could possibly do. They make Freddie Kitchens the head coach, and they bring in Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, and they put all this pressure on Baker, and they tell a year 2 quarterback, it's all on you. And Baker couldn't handle the pressure. Then the pressure goes away, 2020, Baker plays great. They win a playoff game. The next year, Baker gets hurt, tries to play through it, doesn't play well because, again, Baker gets hurt, just like Will Levis gets hurt. And Cleveland's out, and they want to go get a serial sexual assaulter, allegedly. They want to go get him and pay him $1 gazillion and give away 3 first-round picks because they don't want Baker anymore. And now Baker's better than Deshaun Watson. Baker goes to Carolina. Again, another franchise that's run like morons that don't know what they're doing, and it doesn't work. Then he goes to Tampa. He's got a decent coach. He's got receivers. And, I mean, Baker is decent. Like, Baker is a good quarterback. But Baker's also replaceable. Patrick Mahomes is not replaceable. If the Titans are going to be good anytime soon, it is going to be because this next coach, offensive, defensive, special teams, basketball, baseball, I don't care. This next head coach is going to have the right plan for Levis that develops him and allows him to flourish with elite coaching. The problem is, if that is a baseball coach or a basketball coach or a defensive coach or a special teams coach, that as soon as that guru works his magic just a little bit with Will Levis, the guru goes somewhere else. Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur are going to be able to pick up right where they left off. There is no worry when it comes to Jordan Love about, well, how's he going to deal with the change in terminology? And again, I don't think Matt LaFleur is a leader of men. I don't think Matt LaFleur is a great strategist. I don't think Matt LaFleur knows how to manage the clock. And Matt LaFleur doesn't have anything to do with defense or special teams. Matt LaFleur's involvement with the Green Bay Packers was so obvious to me when they missed the field goal and they went down to the sideline and Tom Rinaldi was like, yep, we asked the coach about the kicker who doesn't make a lot of kicks, and he told us, guys, just pray. Remember what Corey Curtis always says? Hope is not a strategy. That's Matt LaFleur's strategy on special teams. Why? Because he doesn't do anything with it. But in today's NFL, that works. And Jordan Love went from allergic to the football field 2 years ago at Kansas City when Aaron Rodgers had COVID to what we saw on Saturday night, and he still has room to grow, and he's got to work out that stupid Brett Favre interception he threw at the end of the game. But he's gone from that to this because he's got an offensive quarterback guru as his head coach. Baker has talent. We all know that. Baker Mayfield is good. But he's not a top 10 quarterback. He's not a top 5 quarterback. And as we learned with guys like Ryan Tannehill, you can get far enough with a decently talented and good quarterback. But it's incredibly hard to win the Super Bowl with that guy. Whereas Kansas City, they blew the Tyreek Hill trade. Just like you screwed up by trading away A.J. Brown, just like Green Bay screwed up by trading away Devontae Adams, they screwed up by trading away Tyreek Hill. On defense, they've got some young guys who are good. They got some old guys that are getting old. On offense, outside of Kelsey and Pacheco, what do they have? But it doesn't matter because they got Mahomes. And Mahomes will figure it out. Mahomes will find a way. That's the way that this guy that they operate is, thank you. That's the way these guys operate is they just, hey, we're going to just turn it over to Mahomes and he'll find a way in the end. That's how they do it. It is that simple. And so, again, Levis has talent. Baker Mayfield has talent. Baker Mayfield, again, number 1 pick in the draft. He has more natural ability than Jordan Love did. But it doesn't matter if you don't get him the right coaching. If you don't get him the right coaching, it'll look like Bryce Young. So I understand, again, Dan Quinn in for a second interview. Look, you want to bring in Dan Quinn. And it's like Willie said to me when we were, when he was going out and I was coming in, and he said, what's wrong with Dan Quinn? And I said, well, for starters, in Atlanta, when they had Kyle Shanahan, they had Matt Ryan playing at a league MVP level. And then as soon as Shanahan went away, they couldn't get it back together. So even if you get a great offensive coordinator with Dan Quinn, as soon as that happens, that coordinator leaves, and now Levis is by himself. And in today's NFL, I don't think that's advantageous for the quarterback. So that's all the things I took away when it came to the Titans search. I'm sure you guys were watching it thinking, oh, let's see what Mike McDonald does, and let's see what this coach does over here. Dave Canales, he might be a candidate. Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson. Let's see what I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, Aaron Glenn blitzed on 4th and 15. I didn't really like that. But again, that's a different job than being head coach. What I was focused on was I saw Baker, and I saw a guy that was rookie of the year. I saw a guy that's been through every stupid situation between the Browns and the Panthers over the last 6 years that I'm like, well, Baker's got talent. Baker's tough. Baker can throw the ball. But Baker has failed because Baker has been surrounded at times by idiots. And so if the Titans surround Will Levis with Dan Quinn, I am worried about what that'll mean for Will Levis. And if Will Levis doesn't get any better, he's going to be the same guy he is right now. He's got a good arm. He can fit it into tight windows. He can make wow throws. He's going to do something stupid, and he's going to get hurt. And the only hope for this franchise is to find somebody who can coach him away from doing stupid things and protect him so he doesn't get hurt. And if not, you end up with Baker Mayfield. And what's happened to everybody who was involved with Baker Mayfield? John Dorsey, the general manager that drafted him in Cleveland, fired. Hugh Jackson, the head coach that drafted him, fired. Freddie Kitchens, the second head coach, fired. I mean, right now, I don't even know what they're going to try with Watson, see if that works out. Carolina, Matt Rule, fired. The general manager, fired. And yet, Baker goes on to Tampa and he's good. That's because Baker was not set up to succeed. And you got to set Levis up to succeed, and it starts with who's coaching him. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Now, I'm trying to read the tea leaves as to what the Titans are going to do or what the Titans are not going to do. There is one thing that, I'll just tell you right now, I'm not interested in. It's not going to happen. I'm not interested in it. I'm not thinking about it. And if they do it, I'm going to go crazy. And you should too. And I think you will go crazy. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Oh, let me tell everybody about FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right. I love FanDuel Sportsbook. It's my official sportsbook app. If you've been watching the NFL playoffs from the sidelines, there is still time to get in the game with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers can bet this Sunday's conference championship games with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. The only one that I feel good about this weekend is San Francisco. Now, I did not think that they played very well. I thought Purdy stunk on Saturday night. But I don't see a dome team going to San Francisco and beating them. I think the Lions' ride is over. As far as the AFC title game, I have no idea. Get started, though, with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to join today. That's FanDuel.com/JGM and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and over in President, Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit is required. Bonuses issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after. Receipt restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
The candidate is Thomas Brown. Now, this is, this was a league source. I had a conversation yesterday with someone who's very familiar with him, and a lot of things I didn't know. One of the big things is, so Thomas Brown, if it were to work out, and of course Thomas Brown, OC for the Panthers this year, everybody's like, oh my God, they suck. What? Stop it. I want Ben Johnson. I get it, but hear me out on Thomas Brown, okay? The NFLPA does this thing where they anonymously survey everybody in the league, and they do it to talk about their coordinators, among other things. But they, like, who do you like playing for? A lot of questions about them and whatever, right? Top 5 offensive coordinators that is in terms of liking to play for, and again, it's also like competence and all these things, I mean, it's not just like, yay, great guy. Sure. Number 1, Frank Smith of the Dolphins. Number 2, Thomas Brown of the Panthers. His offense is the offense we've talked about. His offense is the offense that I think ideally the Titans would switch back to. That's not the offense he called this year. The offense he called this year was Frank Reich's offense. And if anybody's paid any attention to what happened with the Panthers this year, it was an absolute bleep show of epic proportions, including David Tepper saying, let's smash all these ideas together and have so Thomas Brown's not even calling his offense. He's calling Reich's offense. And then Reich was a play caller, and then he had Thomas do it for a while. It was a disaster.
There you go. That was Joe last week talking about Thomas Brown. And I said it again. This may be a legitimate interview with the Titans, giving him a second interview today in person. But it's a non-starter for me. Now, Thomas Brown does check some of the boxes that I want in the head coach that the other guys do not, like a Dan Quinn or a Mike McDonald or any of the defensive coaches, which is that he coaches offense, and the system that he coaches is the McVay-Shanahan guru system. And that's great. But Thomas Brown has never been an offensive coordinator at the NFL level, which matters. I'm not hiring Norm Chow again. Has never been an offensive coordinator at the NFL level except for this season at Carolina. They finished 32nd. And some people say, well, Mike Vrabel finished 32nd at Houston. And that, right, and I don't want to hire Mike Vrabel this time around. If I wanted to hire Mike Vrabel, then I wouldn't have fired Mike Vrabel. But where the game was 6 years ago when they hired Mike Vrabel and what people were looking for compared to where the game is now and where it's going and what you got to have in a head coach, they're not the same spot. I'm sorry. He might be the next great guru, right? It might be, Mike Shanahan to Sean McVay to Zach Taylor and Matt LaFleur and this one and that one. And Thomas Brown could be there. But he's got to wash that Panther stink off of him before I can take him seriously as a head coaching candidate. And when it comes to the Titans, what bothers me is the idea of people trying to excuse the fact that they were horrendous in Carolina, as if we all don't know that it's Tepper's fault and that it's Frank Reich's fault, but that this guy is absolutely, positively not blamed at all. And that's not how this works. Baker Mayfield had that David Tepper Panther stink on him, which is why he had to take that one-year deal with Tampa Bay and compete with Kyle Trask. Baker Mayfield has subsequently washed the Panther stink off of him. Bryce Young. This time last year, most people considered Bryce Young the best quarterback in the draft. Joe said he would trade 3 first-round picks to go up and take Bryce Young. Not C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young. Thomas Brown was his offensive coordinator. Now, again, I don't think that Bryce Young sucks because everything in Carolina was a disaster. But I'm not sitting here saying, gosh, I wish I could start my franchise over again today with Bryce Young. I bet you could call the Panthers right now, offer the 7th overall draft choice and Will Levis, and get Bryce Young as the quarterback. How's that? Joe wanted 3 first-round picks for him. I'm offering a 2nd and 3rd rounder, Levis, and the 7th overall pick, and I bet I could get Bryce Young today. Why? Because of the Panthers stink. That's why. I'm not hiring this guy to be head coach. So it may be a Rooney Rule interview. I feel incredibly uncomfortable when it comes to saying, oh, that's a Rooney Rule interview. And I find it to be almost, inhumane to say that, quite frankly. But again, this is all strategy of coaching hires and everything else. Hiring Thomas Brown is a non-starter. And I am admitting that Thomas Brown may go somewhere else as an offensive coordinator, establish himself as a guru, get a head job, and be a great head coach. But where we sit right now, we have to have some standards. And so, offensive coordinator, 1 year, 32nd ranked, had a young quarterback, didn't do anything to develop him. Not happening for me. 615-737-1025 is our phone line if you want to weigh in. Again, that's 615-737-1025 here on the program. Josh says, our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Josh says, what scares me is that by Wednesday, Brian Callahan and Bobby Slowick could both be hired. That, of course, being that the Titans are interviewing Dan Quinn on Wednesday. Let me say this. There's not enough jobs that if Belichick gets a job and Harbaugh gets a job and Ben Johnson gets a job, because I think Ben Johnson's out when it comes to the Titans. He didn't interview with them, and they can't talk to him until, I believe, after the Super Bowl, if the Lions make it that far, even though the teams that have already talked to him can talk to him after the conference championships because of the bye week. You can't talk to him because you didn't talk to him the first time. So all these guys are going to get hired or get jobs, right? Harbaugh's going to get a job. Belichick's probably going to get a job. Johnson's probably going to get a job. And so at that point, it's like you and Carolina. And again, we talk about Panthers stink. Now, Joe did say this morning that his called shot is Brian Callahan as head coach, Thomas Brown as offensive coordinator. Fine by me. That'll work. That will work. And that's the opportunity for Thomas Brown to wash that Panthers stink off of himself. But he's going to have some success as an offensive coordinator before I make him a head coach. And this idea that some people are like, oh, I don't think it, don't, I don't, no. You have to have some success, right? You know, you can't just hire a guy. This is not the owner of the Texans, Cal McNair, wanting to interview. Who was that bozo quarterback that he prayed with that he wanted to hire as his head coach? Oh.
McCown?
Yeah. Remember that? He wanted to hire like Josh McCown to be the head coach. Guy never coached a day in his life. And he wanted to hire Josh McCown to be the head coach because they prayed together. I mean, no. We're not doing that. We have to have standards around here. And that is nothing against Thomas Brown other than the fact that he is the one who signed up to be the offensive coordinator of the Panthers last year. I mean, we all knew that guy who owns that team's a kook. We all knew, especially on this show, Frank Reich has his issues. One texter says, Joe was an idiot. Bryce Young does stink. It's not the Panthers. I mean, it's definitely the Panthers. Now, does Bryce Young stink? I don't think so. Maybe I don't know. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. One texter says, didn't the Titans players vote that Craig Aukerman would be a great head coach? No thanks about the player surveys. I will agree with you. I don't care what the players think. So as soon as I started today, people started texting in, what do you think about Bobby Slowick now after that game, Jared? So we'll answer that next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game, and we are presented by Jarrett Companies. We're very proud to be presented by them. We are presented by Jarrett Companies Commercial Fire and Commercial Plumbing HVAC Division, 615-515-1270, JarrettCompaniesInc.com. And we are officially inviting you to our first ever Soup, S-O-U-P, Super Saturday. Join us and come hungry Saturday, February 10th at New Heights Brewing for all the soup you can handle from some of the finest restaurants in Middle Tennessee. Bring the family and enjoy delicious soup, live music, games, and more for kids. It's the first ever Super Saturday benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation. More details coming, including how to purchase tickets.
Bobby Slowick is a hot candidate. There's a 36-year-old offensive coordinator matching wits with a 36-year-old defensive coordinator in Mike Macdonald of the Ravens. Both guys are high on many lists.
They sure are. They're high on my list. I have to believe Bobby Slowick here is going to call something where ball comes out quick.
Over the middle, that's Nico Collins. What a throw and catch. Third down and long, and C.J. Stroud finds Collins for 29 yards.
There you go. That was on the broadcast of the 36-year-old Bobby Slowick versus the 36-year-old Mike Macdonald. And as soon as we started this show, we had one text at 2 o'clock, which means didn't even listen to what we said at this react, just said, I want to get in there. I wonder how much time you're going to spend on Bobby Blewett today, says one texter. Another texter, 203. How do you feel about Bobby Slowick now? Let me say this. I'm still all in on Bobby Slowick. I don't think the Titans are going to hire him. He must have bombed his interview because it doesn't sound like he's going to be brought in for a second interview, though we don't know. And I will be incredibly happy if at some point today or tomorrow I'll always get a little tweet from Ian Rappaport or Tom Pelissero. The Titans like to take their business to the league network. And it comes out and it says, the Titans are bringing in Bobby Slowick on Thursday for interview number 2. I will be excited. But I'm not going to let that game on Sunday completely wipe away what I think about Bobby Slowick or why I like Bobby Slowick. In fact, there was something that Troy Aikman said on the broadcast, and Ian backed me up on this. This is not just something that I've done lately. I do very much listen to Troy Aikman call the game, and the reason why I like Aikman the best right now is because Aikman is the one guy that I feel like is on TV who does not give a rat's ass about how the players feel, the coaches feel, the league feels, the referee feels. Aikman just says whatever he thinks, whether it's good or bad, and I value that kind of anonymity. So, this is what Aikman said in the middle of the game talking about the Texans. I get all these texts and calls about, it doesn't matter who we hire as Coach Jared if we can't protect the quarterback. Here is what Troy Aikman said about Bobby Slowick.
You know, this offensive line for Houston is not a great offensive line. A lot of the protection that they've been able to give C.J. Stroud throughout the year has really been more a result of the scheme and the way that they do things offensively.
And everybody keeps saying, if we had their offensive line, Jared, it's like Troy's telling you, backup left guard, backup center, George Fant at right tackle, who you signed Chris Hubbard over. The only two guys on that offensive line that are legitimate starters, Tunsil, who is good and had a horrendous game on Saturday, Tunsil, and Shaq Mason, who they acquired from Tampa Bay. So, I'm going to tell you right now, like, you guys can say, well, they didn't score a lot of points. There was one play where Stroud rolled out to the right, ended up throwing the ball away, and Troy went back, and he says, here's Nico Collins running right down the field wide open, saying, hey, throw me the ball, throw me the ball, throw me the ball. And it's another reason why, as much as I think the Ravens defense is freaking good, and they are, and I do think Mike Macdonald's going to get a head coaching job eventually, I wouldn't hire him just because with a young quarterback, I'm not going for a defensive coach. But I do think he's going to get a job. My thing with the Ravens is I look at them on offense as well as defense, and I'm like, everybody on that team is getting better. So, yes, we can say, wow, look at Mike Macdonald. Kyle Hamilton has become the best safety in the NFL. Wow, look at Mike Macdonald. Jadeveon Clowney, finally, 10 years into his career, learned how to sack the quarterback. But look on offense, too. Like, these guys they plug in John Simpson at guard. He's great. Ronnie Stanley's in and out of the lineup. They got a left tackle. He's fine. Morgan Moses playing great. Lamar's having a great season. Isaiah Likely. The touchdown grab Isaiah Likely had on Sunday was, I think I looked this up, the 139th pick of last year's draft, going up and mossing the 3rd overall pick in last year's draft. That is impressive. So everybody gets better on the Ravens. So it's not just the defense. It's not just Mike Macdonald. And with Bobby, I think Slowick did a fantastic job. And again, you guys talk about how, none of this matters if we don't get an offensive line, and it's right. And Troy Aikman's telling you, they scheme the protection for C.J. Stroud. I mean, all these people. Somebody did text me, and they said, because again, I'm pro Bobby Slowick. Somebody said, so are you on board if it is Brian Callahan? Clearly your preference is Bobby Slowick. I am on board with Brian Callahan. I can do Brian Callahan. In fact, I am optimistic about Brian Callahan. I like Brian Callahan's experience, which makes me think that he knows a lot of coaches that he can put on the coaching staff. I like the tree that Brian Callahan comes from. I like the way that Jake Browning played this year. It's one thing when it's Joe Burrow, who, again, Ed Orgeron won a national championship because Joe Burrow was so great. But when Joe Burrow went out, they still fought with Jake Browning at quarterback. And I even sent out a tweet during the Monday night game against Jacksonville where I said, if Will Levis can ever learn to control the game the way that Jake Browning did that night, Will Levis has a chance to be special. So I am absolutely on board with Callahan. And again, the idea TD had last week about Callahan and Thomas More, great. But no on Thomas More as a head coach. Thomas Brown as a head coach. Texter to the text line says, I heard Will Levis is the most important thing to the Titans. He's really good, and he started many games, but he got pulled out because of injury. They need to re-sign Derrick Henry, get an offensive line. That's the best thing they can do to help the young man and hope he stays healthy. Or they can scheme up protection, and again, they're going to run the ball. Any of these Shanahan McVays, they run the ball. Todd Gurley, when he was on Sean McVay's first couple of Rams teams, he was not an innocent bystander. He got the football. So they're going to run the ball. That's, to me, that's simple. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So a lot of times people ask me, especially when something good or bad happens with the Titans, and they say, what would Floyd say? What would Floyd say? And I've always said that I get very uncomfortable when it comes to determining what Floyd would say. Now, there are some times that I am telling you right now he would not have been okay with Julio Jones's injuries. But I don't like speaking for him because, quite frankly, I remember one day we were sitting right here at Barrel House, and he went off on me, maybe the only time he ever did, during a commercial break about, don't put words in his mouth. So I am always, cognizant of that. So I went back. And I listened through during the last Titans coaching search. So this is from 6 years ago, but the pointers that Floyd had. And we'll get to those next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena, Preds tonight, Florida Panthers, 7 o'clock right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. So many times in my life, over the last 3 years, something's come up and I've thought, what would Floyd think? Or I would remember things that Floyd said. And as many times as I've told the right tackle story or the top 10 guard story, those things I found have really stuck with me over the years. And it's funny because there are some people that have moved to town, they've listened for 2 years, and I'm like, man, they missed the entire Jared and the GM era of this show. So if you are new to this program, let me just say this. Floyd Reese is the greatest general manager in the history of the Tennessee Titans. Was the GM of the team that rebuilt from the run and shoot days with Warren Moon into the team that ended up 1 yard short of the Super Bowl. Later would go on to be the senior football advisor of the New England Patriots. We reference him on the show every day, and he did a show with us for 5 years. And it was some of the most enjoyable years ever. And I just consider myself, and Ian, I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, I consider myself incredibly lucky. Not only the kind of friend Floyd was, but just all the things that we got to learn about life and everything else just from being around him every day.
For sure.
And so with this coaching search this weekend, I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to 6 years ago in 2018 when the Titans had a coaching search, and I'm going to see what he said back then and what maybe applies now. So I want to start with the top. This is the first thing that Floyd Reese said in 2018 on the then Jared and the GM program about what, once you enter that coaching search, what you got to get.
Well, I mean, they're going to need somebody that can take the players that they already like here and be able to use them and use them effectively. And I think if you don't do that, then you're literally going to be starting all over. Because I think we already have an idea of areas on the offense and defense that we're going to have to work on in the offseason. Well, yeah, and you would say, okay, running back, let's say. Running back, we're fine. We don't have to worry about it. Well, if you bring in an offensive coordinator that doesn't like our running backs, well, now you have to add running back to that search. And that example is true in virtually every position. So for you to bring in a guy that's not going to like big receivers, of which we have some of, or not going to like, run blocking offensive linemen or whatever the case may be, well, each time that happens with whoever comes in, that's a whole new area that you've got to go shopping for. And what happens is when you finally get to a point, your third year, where you're saying to yourself, okay, if we can just streamline this area, if we can punctuate this position, if we can do these 3 or 4 or 5 things, now we really are in a position to be able to contend. Well, if that is abbreviated by the fact that all of a sudden you're adding 3 new positions you have to go out and shop for, well, you're taking a step back.
Okay. When I heard that about, hey, you got to like the players that are already here, or else you got to get rid of all the players and start over again, and that's going to take 3 years, and quite frankly, coach is probably going to be fired when that happens. I thought about one person in particular. Levis. If you don't like Levis, then you have to start over again at quarterback. Just like he said, back then we knew Derrick Henry was the running back. If you don't like the big running back, this is probably not the place for you. Well, if you don't like Levis, and a lot of people don't, said young defensive coach, or I guess in Dan Quinn's case, an old defensive coach. And we're talking about the young quarterback and what they're going to do. And Floyd said, this is what has to happen if you decide to go with a defensive coach. Dan Quinn's getting an interview Wednesday. Here's what Floyd said 6 years ago.
If you come in and you're a young defensive coach, you've got to go out and hire the absolute best offensive guy that's out there. And that's part of the problem, I mean, with the timing of this whole thing and where we're going to end up, because it's going to get very, very tight very quickly.
Okay. Basically, if you hire Dan Quinn, if you hire Mike McDonald, If you hire one of these guys, you have to go get the best offensive coordinator. Now, what do we know the big problem with that is? As soon as in today's game, as soon as that young offensive coordinator or that great offensive coordinator, unless they're 85 years old, unless the second they have a little bit of success, someone's going to try to hire him as head coach, which happened when the Titans hired their last coach. They brought in Matt LaFleur, the guy from the Rams. They thought he was the best young guy. Okay, now he's gone. Now, I asked Floyd what's best for Marcus, which I think we can translate right now into what's best for Levis. The question for you is what's best for Marcus?
Well, I mean, anytime you can keep things similar, it's going to help a young quarterback. Now, is it going to be exact? No, it won't. But if it's close enough that he doesn't have to learn an entirely new progression, read system, all of those, pass protections, it sounds silly, but play calls and what you're calling. I mean, if you go from a system where you're, like we've heard him call audibles, you go 781, 781, well, that may be a pass pattern. Well, if you go to a system now where you're going, king left, double wide out, zoom, Z cross, X post, Y out, halfback check flat, well, I mean, that's going to be a problem. And so I think you would like for a lot of that to be the same if you can. Now, that being said, I don't think Marcus would have any trouble learning any of that. I really don't. But that's not the question in my mind. The question in my mind is, how do we get Marcus good?
I was thinking about, I must have listened to that clip 15 times today. Because on one hand, I think about Levis and the terminology and the running an offense and changing a bunch of things and everything else. And I'm like, well, if they were to go to the Shanahan-McVay system, Levis would not have a problem with that because Levis ran that in college under a McVay guy in Liam Cohen in 2021 and a Shanahan guy, Rich Scangarello, in 2022. So as far as, again, as Floyd said, what was that play call there, Ian?
I don't know. It was a lot.
King left, 24.
Something shoot.
Y cross, X out, Z flat, halfback check, whatever it may be. Ready? Break. Whatever that may be, I don't know, But Levis probably does know that. And again, on the Marcus front, let's move this over to Levis. I know Will Levis is smart. So I know Will Levis would not have a hard time with that, even though I don't think there would be as much of an adjustment because he's already run this kind of offense. But the very, very end of that was the part that really matters, right? Can you get that very, very end again, Ian? Again, when we're talking about what's best for Levis or what's best in this case for Marcus, I don't want to change too much because it might be this and it might be that, and he's got to learn this and then he's going to have to learn that. And forget about all that. The changing, that's not, but it's the last part.
I really don't, but that's not the question in my mind. The question in my mind is, how do we get Marcus good?
That's the question. When it comes to what they need in a coach for Levis, it's not so. Now, again, I like the Shanahan-McVay system, and I'm comfortable with the fact that he's run it. But it's about which one of these guys can make him good, can get him to stop turning the football over so that pick six against Miami doesn't happen, so that ball against the Texans on the sideline where he's looking for DeAndre Hopkins as Treylon Burks is coming wide open, so that doesn't happen. And some of these guys, like Brett Favre, they'll never stop doing stupid stuff. But the hope is that a new coach, a young coach, an offensive coach can get that out of Levis. Now, rebuilding. Let's tear it all down. It's going to take years for us to build it back. The old man says that it probably doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I mean, it's so wrong on so many different levels.
What's wrong about it?
I mean, what makes you think anybody? See, this is where I don't know what sport you're thinking about when you think a GM hires a coach with the intent that, we're just going to go ahead and lose for a couple of years. And then after that couple of years, I'm going to fire this coach and go get another one. Nobody in sport does that. Nobody. That never, ever happens. You don't ever bring somebody in and say, you know what, he's just going to bide time here until
John didn't hire him.
4 years ago, or 3 years from now, or 4 years from now, when I can get Johnny, who's over here at the Colts, and his contract will be up, and then I'll bring him in. Nobody works like that.
Okay, which means this coach needs to win. Like, that's this coach, they're trying to go find a coach to go win the Super Bowl with. Now, this would be somewhat of a concern with Bobby Slowick because he's been coaching for 10 years, but he's only 36 years old. And again, some of these younger assistant coaches, some of these gurus, again, a Brian Callahan probably didn't have this issue because his dad's a coach and he's been coaching for a while, and Slowick's dad's a coach. But again, young coaches. And I think this was the biggest problem Mike Vrabel had as coach of the Titans is what to be aware of if you hire a young coach. This is what Floyd said.
If you bring in a young coach, like the guys we're talking about, interviewing this week, I mean, it's even harder because they know less people. I mean, they just don't have they don't know everybody in the league. And consequently, they end up having to interview and want to hire guys that they know. Well, if you only know a third of the league and that third of the league is hired, now what do you do? Now you're out knocking on doors and bringing guys in that you really don't know a great deal about. So, I mean, it's a concern, I think. I mean, it's an issue. I mean, it's the same with every team that gets in the same situation. But it does. And especially if that rule stays the same, and you can't interview any of the guys in the Super Bowl until after the Super Bowl. I mean, now you're getting ready for the combine, and you don't have a staff yet.
Go Jags! I miss that old chuckle, but he's right. And again, that's why I think Vrabel's staff was Ohio State and Texan guys, because Vrabel didn't really know a lot of people. And the good thing was LaFleur knew guys like Keith Carter, the offensive line coach, and he brought in Rob Moore, the receivers coach, and Tony Dews. But again, a young coach with the search, I mean, that is something that is going to be at least a little bit of an issue. And then finally, the last one, and I decided to put this in here because, again, I am sitting trying to read every tea leaf about what the Titans are saying. What does this mean? What does that mean? Here's what I think advice for the fans on the coaching search from the GM.
I don't know where you act. I mean, if you knew how secretive things were, if you knew how little you didn't know, then you wouldn't say things like that. But you do. And you know what? I just go along with it. I mean, I smile and nod, which is fine. I mean, I have no problem with that. But I don't think you need to sell it like this is the answer, because you really don't know.
I just figured let's just use that as a disclaimer for pretty much everything here. And it was a good little chuckle to hear that one through. So there you go. Again, when it comes to Floyd, you need a coach who already likes the players that you already have. To me, there's one in particular. Number 2, a defensive coach has to hire the best offensive coordinator. 3, what's best for the quarterback? 1, we got to keep in mind the terminology. But 2, who's going to get the quarterback good? Who's going to make him elite? 4, rebuilding? Meh. They're not interested in that. 5, young coaches do not know a lot of potential assistants. And then the last one, don't listen to Jared. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We will get to your phones on this. And then there was another thing that the old man said that at the time was applicable to that exact situation. Now the opposite is actually true, but the basis of what he's saying is right. Huh? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And again, we are presented by Jarrett Companies, Commercial Fire Plumbing HVAC Division, 615-515-1270, JarrettCompaniesInc.com.
The truth is, I mean, the risk is the same from the standpoint you still have to go out and find a good head coach someplace.
Right, but if you're 3-20, it's probably easier to find a better coach than a 3-20 coach than it is to find a guy who got you to the playoffs for the first time in a decade.
Well, yeah, but no, you're missing my point. The point is you're going out trying to find somebody that's going to lead you to the Super Bowl. So whether you fire a guy that just won 10 games or a guy that won 0 games, you're still looking for that same guy. They see the Rams come in here with Goff throwing the ball up and down the field, and that's what they want. That's the kind of system they want. Well, Goff is at home right now. And all of these other guys with the systems, except for Brady, all 3 other teams in the playoffs are doing exactly what we want to do. And that's 3 out of 4 teams in the playoffs. So in spite of what the fans think and in spite of what the fans want, at least this year, the surest way to win and to have a chance to be a world champ is to do what we're trying to do.
That was Floyd 6 years ago saying, look, this way the Rams are doing it right now, that's great. Jared Goff's at home. But that was 6 years ago. And where we sit today, I was listening to that, and what I was thinking about today was 6 years ago, he was right. The leader of men coach, right? Belichick, we're smarter than you. We work harder than you. We're more experienced than you. That was what ruled the league, the Patriot way. Well, right now, what rules the league is the guru offensive coach. That's what leads what is now. You want to be a world champ, just like he said? It's McVay who won a championship. It's Andy Reid who's won championships. Now, look, Bruce Arians was an offensive coach. That was Brady. Well, how likely are you to have Tom Brady as the quarterback of the Titans? So that's out. So now you want to be a head coach. You want to get a guy that's going to win the Super Bowl. The easiest way to do that is with your young quarterback becoming a superstar, which is not a given, which means that the guru coach is the guy that has to be hired as the head coach of this team, because that's how you win. Right now, looking around the league, Baltimore is a little different. They're built differently. But if you want to try to build it like Baltimore, you got to go back about 15 years. Outside of that, the Lions have a guru offensive coordinator, and I don't know how good the Lions are going to be the second that the guru offensive coordinator goes away. And then Shanahan and Reid. And they've developed the quarterbacks. Mahomes, again, Corey Davis was drafted before him. Mahomes was not a sure thing. But the guru, Andy Reid, one of the greatest offensive gurus of all time, developed Mahomes into the special player that he is today. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Michael has been waiting patiently and is up next on our program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Michael?
Hey, Jared. Thanks for taking my call. So I'll say this first part a little bit sarcastically, but I was told that Vrabel was going to be having his door knocked down by a bunch of teams, firing their coaches to pick him up. So I'm kind of a little bit confused as to why he hasn't gotten a head coaching job yet. But
well, he is getting the interviews. I mean, we do have to. I had a cold take last week about nobody's interviewing Vrabel, and then like 5 minutes later, the Chargers interviewed him. So he is getting interviews.
Yeah, I was saying the same thing to myself. But anyway, my real question is, do you think there's a possibility that part of the reason that Vrabel was fired was because the organization didn't think that he could develop Will Levis?
I absolutely think that's part of it. I mean, Michael, thank you for your call. And again, I think that Floyd cut is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Vrabel is a great, the things that Vrabel is, I don't want to say like he's the best leader of men because, this year a Tierra Tart situation and the Monty Rice situation and the Christian Fulton situation and everything. So he's not the best leader of men. But like the thing about Vrabel is that he is a dude, right? Like he's a dude's dude. He's the kind of guy who's a competitor and he holds you accountable and he pushes you and he's all these things. Like he is the king. And then everybody gets in line behind the king. And when the Patriots were winning championships, that was where the league was headed. But then everybody started to realize when Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay that it's really not about this system. I mean, there's nothing special about what the Patriots do. They're not that much smarter than you. They're not, more efficient than you. They're not better workers than you. They're not none of that. They're Brady. Brady is an all-time great. Like, it's almost like Phil Jackson was smart enough to say, all right, if I'm going to not be with Michael, I'm going to be with Kobe. Again, like, let's make sure we're doing this right. It was about Brady. Now, I'm not saying Belichick didn't have anything to do with it. Belichick does belong in the Hall of Fame. And, I mean, I'm not just crapping on Belichick. But outside of that, I used to ask the old man when we were together, why do all these Patriot coaches, whether it's Romeo Crennel or Eric Mangini or Charlie Weiss in college or, Joe Judge, why do these never work? And he said, because you can't replicate that model without Bill and without Tom. And again, Tampa Bay, lost the next year because Bruce Arians blew a coverage. That blew a coverage and they hit the ball to Cooper Kupp and they won the game. And it's like, that doesn't happen with Belichick. Like, that does not happen. Just a missed assignment at the end of the game in the heightened days of the Patriots. That does not happen with Belichick. But you also have to have Brady to come down from 28-3. And so what the league has learned is, no, we don't want Matt Patricia. We don't want Josh McDaniels. We don't want Bob Quinn. We don't want John Robinson. We don't want all of these Patriot guys. And Vrabel is a Patriot guy. Like, that's the system that he's been built on. And again, you want to win a world championship? Because none of those Patriot people are playing right now. The closest one lost yesterday, Jason Light in Tampa Bay. And I think he's adjusted some off that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The amount of texts with all these people that are, pouring in about, man, we miss Floyd. Trust me, I do too. And the one thing I'll say is it's incredibly cool to be able to go back and listen to old conversations and just think about, what he would say now. 615-737-1025. We'll get some of your phones. I do want to get to this next, though. That great game last night between the Chiefs and the Bills. And everybody's feeling bad for the Buffalo Bills today. I'm not. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
And now here's Bass. We talked to Sean McDermott after his 1-for-3 performance last week. He said he has tremendous support in the building. If he has to make one for us, with the game on the line, he will. 44 yards, Bass. No, he doesn't make it. Wide right. Wow. The two most dreaded words in Buffalo have surfaced again.
What an unbelievable stand. Kansas City really did stand up and make it very difficult on every 3 plays to make it. Buffalo just didn't have anything easy, no big plays. And to me, the pressure of that moment, it's just so intense, Jim. It's not over here right now.
You got 2
but
timeouts
Kansas
for the
City
Bills.
is definitely in a driver's seat.
You know, I wish it wouldn't have been put in that situation. You know, you win as a team, you lose as a team. You know, one play doesn't define a game. It doesn't define a season. I know people are going to be out there saying that. You know, we got to be there for him because, again, we execute a couple plays prior, probably singing a different tune right now.
I have no sympathy for the Buffalo Bills. And I think there are a lot of people that are like, oh, that's so hard for Buffalo. Oh, I'm so sorry. They showed the guy on TV crying, which I did feel bad for him. Ian, do you have any sympathy for the Buffalo Bills for yesterday?
No.
I have no sympathy.
For who? The fans or the players?
I mean, fans are fans.
Fans,
It sucks for them.
it kind of sucks. I mean, to be an adult, though, and crying like that seems a bit much.
Yeah, I did cry, though, when the Titans lost the Super Bowl by a yard.
Well, you were 10?
10.
Okay, acceptable. This guy was like,
40.
Yeah, come on now. But, yeah, I know, fans maybe a little bit, players, nah, it's hard to feel bad for them.
I'll say this. They are loyal fans in Buffalo, which I'll give them credit for. And they're crazy. Did you see Jason Kelsey chugging out of the bowling ball with the tailgaters yesterday?
Bowling ball, no, but I saw him plenty, in the stands and whatnot.
I was cool with the whole Jason Kelsey thing. The Aziz Al-Shaair thing, we'll get to that later, I was not okay with. But the Buffalo Bills, I feel no sadness for the Bills. And here's why. Because that stuff like that, first of all, that Jim Nantz cut said it best, right? Well, he was 1 for 3 last week, but Sean McDermott says they absolutely believe that if the game's on the line, he'll make the kick. Oh, he missed it. It's like, who screwed that up? Stephon Diggs, too busy bitching all season long to pay attention to catch the football. Josh Allen misses a wide open touchdown at the end of the game, or the crossing route short, which is what he should have thrown to, given the circumstances. But Josh Allen can't stop himself from being a cowboy with the game on the line. And he's like, I'm going to throw the ball down the field. Oh, yeah. It's like, dude, just throw it short, pick up the first down, move on. And then there's another reason why I don't feel bad either. Because I think Mahomes would have come right down and won the game. Like, they were kicking that ball with 1:50 to go or whatever it is. And I'm like, yeah. And then they're going to kick off, and Mahomes is going to hit Kelsey for a gain of 18, and then Mahomes is going to scramble, and he'll pull one off, and then Mahomes is going to throw a ball on the sideline, and one of these unnamed receivers who we've never heard of or is a consistent dropper like Valdez-Scantling is going to catch the football, and they're going to be setting up for a 51-yard kick, and Butker, who nails all of those kicks in the Mahomes era, is going to hit it right down the upright, and the game's going to be over. Buffalo, if you're going to beat Kansas City, you have to make the plays. You have to have the guts to do it. You have to, and I'm sorry, but nobody would feel bad for the Titans if this happened to them. Nobody felt bad for the Titans when Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions against the Bengals and cost the Titans their Super Bowl, because that Titans team would have beaten the crap out of Kansas City the next week. Just physically would have beaten them up. I mean, I don't feel bad for a team that runs one of the stupidest fake punts I've seen. Now, I'm not, I want to take that back. I understand the fake punt. I wouldn't have done it, but I understand the fake punt. But all this boo-hooing about the Buffalo Bills, like, it's not fair that Kansas City won the game in Kansas City. Kansas City played better. I'm sorry. I mean, I'll tell you about last night's game. I want to say it was the first drive of the second half. Kansas City goes right down the field and scores. And I'm like, I was feeling major Brady-era Patriots vibes from that Chiefs team. And it just hit me that in all these games where we say, oh, well, if Mahomes hadn't made that incredible run right before halftime against the Titans in the AFC Championship game, oh, well, if Mahomes hadn't been hit out of bounds last year by the guy from Cincinnati, oh, well, if Tyler Bass had made the field goal, oh, well, if all these things, if they didn't call the holding against Philadelphia in the Super Bowl, oh, well, if all these things didn't happen, Kansas City would have won this. And it compartmentalized for me that, you know what? If Mahomes didn't make that play before the half against the Titans, he'd have made another one. At some point in that game, he'd have made another play because that's who he is. 6 AFC Championship games. He is that dude. And you know that I love Tom Brady. Think he's the greatest quarterback ever. Think that there is not much of a discussion surrounding Tom Brady. Think he's the greatest winner ever with Michael Jordan. But, I mean, Mahomes got it. Like, it is not if Bass had made that kick, Mahomes would have done something. That's what he does. Mahomes has been to the AFC Championship game now 6 times. Here are the people that have beaten Mahomes along the way. Number 1, Brady. His first year in 2018 in overtime in the AFC Championship game. Number 2, Brady in the Super Bowl. Number 3, Joe Burrow in overtime in the AFC Championship game. That's it. That's it. I mean, if you want to beat Patrick Mahomes, you're going to do it by the skin of your teeth. By just a tiny little nub, you're going to beat him. And you're going to have to be either the greatest player who ever lived or the only guy who I think has that same assassin inside of him that Mahomes has. And that's Burrow. And that's the other thing that pissed me off about the game yesterday. All week. Oh, this is the next Brady Manning. Allen versus Mahomes. No, it's not. Brady versus Manning was always the greatest statistical quarterback versus the greatest winning quarterback, right? Like Brady would throw for 238 in a game, but he won every game. And when the game was on the line at the end and the ball was in Brady's hands, it was over and you knew it. Kind of like Mahomes. Manning was the guy who was throwing for 385 when 300 yards was a serious number in the NFL, was winning the league MVPs, statistically the highest rated quarterback, and yet it was always kind of like the grit and the, find a way of the Patriots versus just the raw, insane ability and smarts of Manning. And it was always like, contrasting styles, but they were equally as successful in different ways. Josh Allen's a great quarterback, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not in Patrick Mahomes' zip code. He's not in Patrick Mahomes' city. He's not in Patrick Mahomes is entering the Michael Jordan, Tom Brady neighborhood. He's not there yet, but he's entering it. Josh Allen's never been league MVP. I mean, I'm sorry. So stop with the Brady Manning stuff. The true rivalry with Patrick Mahomes in this year, I think is going to be with Joe Burrow. And I remember the first year or so, Mahomes and Watson were at the Pro Bowl, and Watson said something like, yeah, we're going to be the new Brady Manning. I was like, hold your horses, Deshaun. Everybody wants to be there. We're talking about Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. You have to be special. Josh Allen's not that special. I mean, he is a great quarterback, and I would kill for him, and he's awesome, and that was a great heavyweight fight last night. But let's not put him in Patrick Mahomes' territory. Burrow, I do think, is the other guy. Because when they play, it is always competitive, regular season and postseason. And in the postseason, Burrow got him the first time by a nub, and then he got Burrow by a nub. But feel bad for the Buffalo Bills. Why would I feel bad for the Bills? I'm a Titans fan. When's the last time something good happened to the Titans? And as I was watching that missed kick and Green Bay's missed kick and Tampa Bay's missed kick and Houston's missed kick, I was sitting there thinking to myself, Why is it that these guys never miss these field goals against the Titans in the playoffs? Why is it when Matt Stover is kicking to win a game in 2008, he always makes his kick? Evan McPherson at the end of the 21 game where Tannehill threw the 3 interceptions, he always makes his kick. I guess they did get a Justin Tucker miss, which never happens in the 2020 playoffs. But why is it that the Titans don't ever get those good fortunes that all these other teams get? That's because they don't have Tom Brady, they don't have Joe Burrow, they don't have Patrick Mahomes. So I don't feel bad for Buffalo. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get to your phones on that and the weekend. If you've got a thought on the playoffs, we'll hit that. Now, I don't know if you saw this last night, Ian. Did you see the Boo-hoo Buffalo Cap crew coming out last night?
I did see that, actually. Lots of free agents, apparently.
Apparently, the Bills are $40 million over the cap. Oh, my God, what are they going to do?
And Josh Allen's cap number, I guess, goes up a bunch.
Oh, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? I have to respond to that. We'll do it next. Window Nation. That's right. Speaking of caps, if you've got your own personal cap, let's get with Window Nation, because with those windows, it is more affordable than you think to replace them. Window Nation at windownation.com. They have no interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. If you look at your home, first of all, do a couple tests, right? Like, look at your windows and say, could this be better? That's the first step. The second thing is, if you felt this week a bunch of cold air when it was cold just running into your house, or when the sun hits it and you feel like you're trapped inside of a sauna, it's probably your windows. So put your hand up to those windows, feel what it feels like, and it could be an old window that needs replacing. And so let Window Nation do all of that with their experts who know exactly what, their design experts know exactly what to do. Everything is a custom job when it comes to Window Nation. They are the best. Again, no interest for 5 years, 50% off all window styles. Do not wait. Simply call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. Again, that's windownation.com. Vandy men's basketball is on 94.9 The Fan this Saturday. The Commodores take on Tennessee at home. Tip-off at 5 o'clock. Pre-game at 4:30. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. So yesterday my phone started popping after the Bills and Chiefs game, and I didn't really know why. I was sitting there watching TV, minding my own business, and it started popping because Rhett Bryan, who's on the Titans radio network, tweeted out, and somebody even just sent it in right here. Rhett Bryan tweeted out last night that Buffalo is an estimated $43 million over the cap in 2024. That's his business. Then the second part of the tweet said, those who think the salary cap isn't real, get your popcorn ready. And then immediately like 20 people tweeted me just that tweet. And I'm like, I got it. I cannot wait for this. The Boohoo Cap Crew. I do not understand how many times we have to see a player who has an unmovable cap hit, or that dead cap hit would be way too much for them to get rid of that guy, or that team can't get that player because they don't have the cap space, and it happens every year. And somehow, some way, miraculously, these teams find ways to get in under the cap. Every year. I don't understand it. And then finally somebody that I trust told me, dude, the cap's fake. I said, what? Oh, yeah. All you got to do is just convert it to a signing bonus. You can now add void years. You can, all these things. The old man used to tell me the rules were not the same when he was GM as they are now. And so everybody out there talking about the Bills is like, oh, you watch this year. They're going to, that Buffalo team, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. They're $40 million over the cap. So what are they going to do? Cut Josh Allen, who has like a $130 million dead cap charge? What are they going to do about that dead cap charge? What are they going to do? Not field a team next year? Are they going to go get guys out of the stands to put on the team because, oh, we can't afford real money? I mean, we got salary cap. So here's what I want everybody to do. I want everybody to make a promise right now. Hands in the air. Say, I do solemnly promise you, Jared Stillman, that if the Bills, and I'm going to throw the Chargers into this too, that if the Bills and the Chargers don't have to tear down their football teams, you will all agree with me that the NFL salary cap is fake. And that the media people that for some reason don't use any critical thinking when it comes to the mechanisms of the salary cap are just not listening. That's all it is. They're just not interested in hearing reality. And I don't know why the big-time media people at ESPN, I get why NFL Network does this. I don't get why the big-time media people at ESPN perpetuate these lies about, oh, I don't know if the Chiefs will be able to sign DeAndre Hopkins because of the salary cap. They might be able to do that if they work out an extension with Chris Jones. Because if they work out an extension with Chris Jones, then the money for the salary cap is actually less, even though Chris Jones would be making more money. And for some reason, the Chiefs decided not to do that. I don't know why. Oh, is it because the Chiefs didn't want to pay him all that money? Oh, that's what it is. Got it. So I just want everybody out there, I mean, they're going to have to tear down the entire team because they're $40 million over the cap. And by the way, not re-signing Gabe Davis, for instance, their number 2 receiver who gets hurt, that is not tearing your team down. I mean, he's not even the number 2 receiver anymore. That Shakir is, which I don't know if you guys were watching the game like I was, but I saw the hit Shakir took, like right to the helmet. And I'm like, he's out. So then Buffalo gets the ball back last night, and I see Buffalo driving, and I'm like, well, who is Allen going to go? He's probably going to have to go to Kincaid here because Shakir's out. And then on the next play, Jim Nance's like, and it's Shakir, and it's a gain of 19. And I'm like, so because it's the playoffs, Shakir doesn't have a concussion? When in any other game, Shakir would have a concussion? But again, getting rid of Gabriel Davis is not, oh, the cap. Getting rid of Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs, that would be, oh, the cap, oh my God. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with the Chargers. They're not going to get rid of Justin Herbert. It's not going to happen because cap's not real. And again, they can restructure. They can add void years. Ian said he saw something where without cutting any players, the Buffalo Bills created $50 million in cap space. $50 million in cap space. It's not hard.
With maximum restructures of contracts.
And then everybody's like, well, you got to kick the can down the road. And if you don't believe me, look at the Saints. You mean the Saints? The Saints who just signed a $100 million quarterback? Well, the Saints aren't very good. That's why. Okay, Chicago and Atlanta had plenty of cap space. They suck too. The reason why the Saints aren't good isn't because they don't have the money or the cap space. It's because Drew Brees retired. That's why they're not good. It's because they got Jameis Winston playing quarterback. That's why they're not good. Come on now. They got Dennis Allen as coach. He's a dope. But no, it's the cap. Oh, the cap, I don't know. And I'll tell you what the most disingenuous cap thing is. First of all, these cap websites, the head of overthecap.com, Joe sent this to me this morning as because Joe believes in the cap, as oh, look at this. So the head of overthecap.com, a cap website, sends out a tweet that says, here is the thing with the cap is fake stuff. Short term, nobody is impacted by the salary cap. It's easy to manipulate and everyone can get under the cap. The problem is the long term for a team. When you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, eventually it gets to one of two paths. And Joe sent that to me see? And I'm like, so you're telling me a guy who runs a salary cap website is trying to argue, the cap's kind of fake, but it's not entirely fake. Well, if the guy who ran the cap website said the cap was fake, wouldn't that be bad for his business? Because then I don't ever look at this spot track stuff anymore and try to think about, where's the signing bonus and what's the, how do we dead cap in June 1st? I don't ever look at that stuff anymore. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Manipulate it however you want. Add void years. Done. I saw Himbo, the research guy for ESPN. He put out there on Twitter today all of Josh Allen's cap numbers. And he was talking about this is about to get so much harder for the Buffalo Bills. People do not understand. Josh Allen's cap hit, 2019, 4.8, 5.9, 10.2, 16.4, 18.6 this past year, 41.7 next year. Right. But just like they did in 2023 and 2022 and 2021, they'll restructure the contract and the cap hit will not be $41 million. Just like how Deshaun Watson's cap hit will not be $65 million next year. But that's all just minutia. The idea of the Bills not spending money, the boohoo cap crew, you guys are crazy. Ugh. One texter says, please explain why the cap exists if it's fake. I'm not arguing, but what's its purpose? Here's the purpose. Ian and I were talking about this during the break. And Andrew Brandt said this, who used to work in the Packers front office and now works for Monday Morning Quarterback. What it is the cap is a mechanism that allows owners that want to maximize profits and not spend a bunch on their team to say, oh, I'm sorry we couldn't add another receiver. The cap. It's the cap. We would want to add this guy, but we can't because of the cap. But the owners that really want to win and want to push their chips in the middle and want to, hey, we're going for it this year. We want it this year. We need it this year. They also have the ability to get the players they want. That's why. It's all, I don't want to sit there and say it's all so they can lie to you. But that's the truth of it. And I know half the people listening right now are like, I've heard my whole life the salary cap's a big deal, so I'm not going to turn around now. But again, any critical thinking, Buffalo and the Chargers, if they have to tear it down this year, oh my God, then I'll say you're right. But I have a feeling that they will be fine. And Buffalo will be back in the playoffs, and we won't be talking about Josh Allen's cap hit or anything like that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on the program. Back to the Titans coaching search. Here's what we know. And more importantly, what we don't know. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena. Preds tonight against the Florida Panthers. Barry Trotz will join us in 1 hour. Predators general manager right here at Bridgestone Arena. The Titans coaching search marches along. And today, we got some pretty big nuggets. The Titans currently are interviewing or are set to interview Brian Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator. You heard that in Ian's update. That's number 2 for him. Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator of the 32nd ranked Carolina Panthers. That's number 2. And, as reported, again, in Ian's update, Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, is scheduled for his second in-person interview on Wednesday. Other than that, Bobby Slowick, Aaron Glenn, we don't know. Now, here's what we do know. So let's start with this, because I think this may be most important. Number 1, the Rooney Rule has been met. David Shaw, in-person, external minority candidate, that's number 1. And number 2, Thomas Brown, with this second interview, will be in person. Thus, the requirement of 2 external minority candidates for the position will have been met, with Thomas Brown of the Panthers and David Shaw. Again, we know Brian Callahan, Thomas Brown, and Dan Quinn are going to get second interviews. Now, people are asking me, is that it? We'll get to that in a second, but the answer to that is we don't know that yet. Number 3, it seems like Ben Johnson is not interested in meeting with the Titans. I heard Corey Curtis today said on the morning show that he knows the Titans are interested in Ben Johnson, and the Titans did formally ask for permission to interview Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson did all these other interviews, including the Panthers, and he did not do the Titans interview. Now, I'm going to give Ben Johnson and the Titans the benefit of the doubt here, because it seems very unlikely that Ben Johnson could be the next coach of the Titans, because the reason why he had to get those interviews in this week is because the rule says that in order for the Titans to interview him during the bye week before the Super Bowl, if Detroit advances, they would have already have had to do one virtual interview with him at the beginning. They didn't. So it looks like the Titans are not in at all on the Ben Johnson sweepstakes, which I'm not the biggest Ben Johnson guy in the world, although I am impressed by him. So again, I don't think he's interested in meeting with the Titans, but that could just be a scheduling thing, right? He's trying to jam in all these interviews, and the Titans have a certain schedule of, we got to interview this guy at this time. We can only get this guy at this time. This guy's got a meeting over here with this team at that time. So there's a chance, as far as Ben Johnson is concerned, that it just didn't work out and that neither side viewed each other as a priority. It's probably more likely that Ben Johnson thought, nah, I'm not interested there. Now, again, continuing on what we do know. Number 4, Aaron Glenn and Mike McDonald. If the Titans are interested in either guy, they will have to wait until after this weekend. And they can get their second interviews during the off week between the Super Bowl and the conference championship games. Bobby Slowick, Mike Kafka, and Brian Johnson, who, by the way, is probably getting fired in Philadelphia as their offensive coordinator, have already done one virtual interview, and Antonio Pierce had a virtual interview and has subsequently been hired by the Raiders. So that's what we know. Now, here's what we don't know. Number 1, when it comes to Callahan, Brown, and Quinn, all set to get second in-person interviews, are they the final 3? No, again, I don't know how Aaron Glenn interviewed. And if they really wanted Aaron Glenn because he's still playing, they'd have to wait. I don't know how Mike McDonald interviewed. And so if they want Mike McDonald, they'd have to wait. So we have to keep that in mind, that it is very possible that the Titans' preferred candidate could be still playing and thus not part of the group that we have right now that is for sure getting second interviews. Another thing that we don't know is if there are going to be any more in-person second interviews. Because today, when I saw the news, we all knew that Brian Callahan was going to interview in person I want to say as early as Thursday of last week, that came out that the Titans were scheduling a second in-person in Nashville interview. So we already knew that. And we knew they were going to interview David Shaw on Sunday. And that made me think, because Shaw, I talked to somebody today that knows him from Stanford and said that he is just the greatest culture guy out there, that he's got young kids, and thus David Shaw would not waste his time to fly across the country to interview for a job that he has no chance of getting. But it does feel to me very much like Shaw is a Rooney Rule, get that done, get that out of the way. And then when I saw this morning that Thomas Brown was going to get a second in-person interview, I thought, oh my God, they're going to hire Callahan. Because Brown is the external minority candidate, Rooney Rule check, and then they're going to make it. But TD tells me that Thomas Brown is absolutely not a Rooney Rule interview. That, again, TD says that he is legit getting interviewed. So we don't know. Like, are these the only 3 finalists? Could it come out tomorrow that Bobby Slowick is going to get a second in-person interview? Could it come out later today that Slowick's going to get a second in-person? I don't know. And the other thing that I don't know about all this is I don't know if the Titans are going in one singular direction. But it actually feels like, unlike this is what we're looking for, which is what I would be doing if I owned the team, because I wouldn't want to waste my time talking to Aaron Glenn when I'm not going to hire a defensive coach. But it does feel like the Titans, when they say we're going to cast a wide net, we're going to interview everybody, it does feel, just based on their actions, that this is what they are doing. So it really looks, there is, again, we talk about all the things that we do know and then what we don't know. We don't know. We don't know if the Titans have decided on a candidate or if the Titans have said, you know what? Everybody that's a part of this process, Amy, Kenneth, Barkley, Rand, Burke, Adolfo, Johnny, Joey, Cindy, Scotty, Scooter, Jackson, Jared, everybody in the group, you go ahead, we do the interviews, you come back, you rank them all, tell me what you think. I have no idea. But it is odd to me that it doesn't feel like there's a singular focus. When, again, I woke up this morning and I really thought Callahan was a singular focus. But that's where we are. And I'm actually kind of enjoying this, even though I am anxious. I am anxious and nervous because I'm afraid the Titans are going to screw it up and hire a defensive coach. 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, we'll get to you. My number one choice, I don't think the Titans are going to take. My number 2 choice, though, I really, really can live with, even if he's not my number 1 choice. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Bobby Slowick is a hot candidate. There's a 36-year-old offensive coordinator matching wits with a 36-year-old defensive coordinator in Mike McDonald of the Ravens. Both guys are high on many lists.
They sure are. They're high on my list. I have to believe Bobby Slowick here is going to call something where ball comes out quick.
Over the middle, that's Nico Collins. What a throw and catch. Third down and long, and C.J. Stroud finds Collins for 29 yards.
That's my guy, Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans. I mean, he turned them around offensively. C.J. Stroud was excellent. And again, he was throwing the ball to guys you didn't even know who they were a year ago except for Dalton Schultz. And I guess Robert Woods because he was on your team. Now, that being said, it does not look like my number one choice, Bobby Slowick, is going to get a second interview. And I understand that we don't always get what we want, and I can live with that. So it looks like, again, the Titans' offensive guru, coordinator turned head coach, young guy that they are kind of circling, at least as far as a second interview is concerned, is Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator with the Bengals. I can live with Brian Callahan. In fact, there are a lot of people, and I would say that I feel like the fan base is kind of torn between the two, and then everybody else. There are some people that are shockingly talking themselves into Mike McDonald, which I don't understand. I mean, again, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but, I mean, I don't understand why you would do that. I mean, again, defense, when the only thing you have is a young quarterback, are you sure that's a good idea? But I go back to the Titans, and I go back to where they sit right now if I can't get my first choice in Slowick, and it being Callahan. I can talk myself into that because Callahan will be able to build a staff. He's been in the NFL for a long time. He's worked with the Denver Broncos, which means Gary Kubiak, which is, again, the Shanahan system, whatever. Like, ultimately, the dawn of this current tree is Mike Shanahan. It's not Kyle. Kyle's kind of the leader of this new era, but he's not, as they would say, he's not the boss. The boss is Mike. And Gary Kubiak, backup quarterback, and then eventually offensive coordinator for Mike Shanahan. Then he was the head coach of the Broncos when they won the Super Bowl with Peyton. Callahan was on that staff. Then he goes to Detroit, where they really didn't do much. And then he goes to Oakland under Gruden, and they didn't really do much. And then he goes to Cincinnati, where they were terrible, and then they got Joe Burrow, and they got good. But the important thing for me is not about what happened in those spots, right? Like, it's not like Peyton Manning wins the Super Bowl with Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware and that great defense, and I'm like, Brian Callahan is the reason why. That's not it. But it is the fact that he has been in so many different places that make me feel comfortable in him being able to build a coaching staff. That, okay, you're the head coach. Do you know people on the defensive side of the ball? The answer is clearly yes. Do you know people that can coach special teams so that you don't just do what Mike Vrabel did and promote Craig Aukerman from assistant special teams coach to head special teams coach and then put him out there and tell everybody, I know what he's doing, even though he wasn't worth a damn. So, while he's not my top choice, because I think that, again, the guru that I like is Slowick, I can live with it. And I'll be happy. And as long as he doesn't get up to the press conference and sound like an idiot, I'll probably feel very good about Brian Callahan after they hire him. Now, what happens after that, that's, again, we'll see. With Rand Carthon, it didn't take very long. I thought Rand had a good opening press conference. It did not take very long after that for me to think, what the hell is this guy doing? Which is how I feel now. And everybody tells me, you got to give Rand more of a chance. Rand, he'll show you. But I don't know. But with Brian Callahan, even though he's not my top choice, I can live with it. Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator of the Panthers, 32nd in the league, 1 year as an OC, no, not interested. Not going to happen. He can be the OC here. He's not going to be the head coach. And I will go freaking bananas if they make him the head coach. If they make Dan Quinn or Mike McDonald or Aaron Glenn, I will go nuts because I don't think that a defensive coach is what Will Levis needs. And even if you think, well, you'll go get Dan Quinn, knows all these coaches. You'll get the best offensive coordinator in the NFL. As soon as you have success, he leaves. It's kind of like people that have been losing weight because of the medications. It's like, I've been on this medication, I've lost 85 pounds. That's great. But what happens when you stop taking that medication? Do you gain the 85 pounds back? When Dan Quinn was the head coach in Atlanta, they had Kyle Shanahan as the offensive coordinator, Matt Ryan, league MVP. After that, Matt Ryan, not league MVP. And they tried. They brought in Steve Sarkisian, and then they fired him, and then they brought back Dirk Cutter, and then they fired him, and then finally they just fired Dan Quinn. So if you get a good one for Levis, he's going to go if you've got a defensive coach. And I'm not interested in that. So that I will not accept that, and I will not accept Thomas Brown. Now, the one thing that I think when we hear about some of these reports, the only time anything gets out in the NFL is when somebody wants it to get out. And I do think, and I think the Mike Vrabel would be Robert Kraft's home run hire choice is an example of this, where owners or ownership groups want to see how people will react. So they don't put their name on something so nobody can say, you lied, Robert Kraft, when you said Mike Vrabel would be a home run hire. But at least got to see which way the wind was blowing. And I am very cognizant of that. In fact, I think that might have been what the Titans were doing when they told Diana Rossini that there was no way, no how Vrabel was going anywhere, only to turn around and fire him once they realized that at least half the fan base was like, wait a minute, hold on. You're not going to even think about firing him? You're not even going to think about trading him? I highly doubt that at Thanksgiving they were 100% in and now they're 100% out. So I do wonder with some of this, like, are the Titans just kind of taking the temperature of the fan base to see what everybody will react to? And that's why I am so down on defensive coaches, because I want them to know before they do it that that would be a disaster. And that is why I am so down on Thomas Brown, because, again, he may be a great coach. I don't know. But when you got 1 year as an OC and it's 32nd in the NFL, you got to go wash that stink off somewhere else. Go wash that stink off in New England, be their offensive coordinator, that's fine. Go wash that stink off, be an offensive coordinator, even here. But you don't get to be head coach. We got to have some standards. Like, I like Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, right? I do. I think Clark's smart. I feel like he's a good coach. Like, I've watched him coach practice before. I've listened. He's explained things to me about the football team that I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like, Clark is a sharp guy. He's a good guy. I am stunned. Like, when Vandy was bad the first year and then much better the second year, I was like, that's Clark. But I can't hire Clark to be the head coach at Alabama when they just won 2 games this year. I can't do it. Even if I think he is good enough to coach at Alabama, can't do it. Can't do it. That's how I feel about Thomas Brown. 615-737-1025. We will get to your phones on the coaching search next. 615-737-1025. And I am less fearful of something happening today than I was on Friday, but I'm not going to rule it out. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
is very possible that the Detroit Lions go into next season, whenever this season ends, needing 2 new coordinators. I'll focus on Aaron Glenn, their respected defensive coordinator, obviously a former superstar player who has emerged as a hot head coaching candidate. On Friday, he interviewed with the Atlanta Falcons and with the Tennessee Titans. Yesterday, he spent time with the Commanders and Chargers. And obviously, he is a very good defensive coordinator. That is why he's in the position and part of why the team is in the position they are in, Tom. But so much of what teams are looking for, it seems, this year is leader of men, leadership culture. And so much of what Dan Campbell has built in Detroit has rubbed off on Aaron Glenn. He embodies that. That is one reason why teams are taking a hard look at him.
That was Ian Rappaport on NFL Network. That's great. No defensive coaches. I'm not interested. I don't think you should be interested. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Every NFL team has good players. Even the worst teams have some good players. Like Brian Burns is on Carolina. They're the worst team. So you've got some good players. Like Jeffrey Simmons is a good player, and Harold Landry is a solid NFL player. But other than that, you really have one player that gives you a chance to be good in the future. Ian, would you like to venture to guess who that one player is?
I'll go quarterback.
He's the only guy. And I have no idea if he's going to make it or not. No clue. He's got talent. He's got natural ability. He can sling the ball from all these different arm angles. He's tough. He's smart. He works hard. But he turns the football over too much. And he gets hurt. Now, if you get him better coaching, will he stop turning the ball over? If you get him a better line and a better scheme, will he stop getting hurt? I don't know. But that's the only way, without completely tearing down your football team, outside of your defensive tackle. That's the only way. Why would I hire a defensive coach? Willie today was like, why is Dan Quinn so bad? I was like, well, did you see what happened in the Super Bowl when they were up 28-3? So I got a bozo on the sideline, plus I got a coach who's too hands-on with the defense. That year, we criticized Vrabel for taking over the play calling from Arthur Smith, or from Dean Pease. But that year that the Falcons were in the Super Bowl, Dan Quinn took over the defense from Richard Smith. Nobody talks about it, but that happened. That's not a good thing. And then when Shanahan left, they went right back to being what they had been before Dan Quinn. And so if you get a good offensive coordinator with Dan Quinn, the offensive coordinator leaves. Sorry, no thank you, not interested. Same with McDonald, same with Glenn. I need a quarterback guru coach who is attached at the hip right there with Will Levis. That's what I need. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. One texter, Austin from Clarksville, says, if Brian Callahan is their guy, there is no way the Titans let him leave, right? I don't know. Another texter says, as far as the Titans, are their current coordinators fired, or is it up to the new coach? Everybody on the staff is under contract, and then the Titans can decide to do whatever they want to do with them. They're going to let them interview for other jobs, because that would be good for them to get another job and then they wouldn't have to pay them out. But right now they're under contract. Texter says, if the Titans hire a defensive coordinator, then what is the new vision that Rand and Amy are referring to? It needs to be to modernize and become like the rest of the NFL. If they can't see that then the Titans have bigger problems. So 6 years ago, I didn't like the hire of Mike Vrabel, but okay. But 6 years ago, when the Titans went and looked for a new coach, what was ruling the league at that time was not Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan had had 2 years at that point, and he was just starting to figure it out with Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. If you remember, at the end of the 2017 season, they won like 6 games in a row after they traded for Jimmy. But it was far from a sure thing. When it goes to McVay, everybody loved McVay, but McVay got smoked at home in the first round of the playoffs by Dan Quinn. So it wasn't like Yes, he was the kind of the up-and-coming guru coach, but it wasn't like that was the proven way to win in the NFL. Everybody wanted to be like the Patriots. So did they wanted to be like the Patriots here. Well, now we know. It's established. Whether it's LaFleur or McDaniel or Zach Taylor or Kevin O'Connell or whomever, the guru coach is the way to go. It's how Daniel Jones goes from inept to $40 million is because they got him a guru coach and Josh Allen regressed. And I don't want that bozo in Buffalo on the sidelines here, a defensive coach, when I'm going up against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not interested in that. Gunner says the Titans did it with Vrabel what you're afraid of with Thomas Brown, which is hiring a bottom feeder defensive coordinator. I agree, and that's why I don't want to do the same thing that I did before. Eli says, does it bother you that Brian Callahan did not call the plays? I don't love it, but it's not the end of the world. None of these guys, by the way, outside of LaFleur, who called the plays for the 1 year he was here and stuck Derrick Henry on the bench, none of these gurus call the plays until they get head coaching jobs. Now, Slowick calls the plays because he went somewhere else. But again, if you leave the nest, Shanahan or McVay, they call the plays. So like O'Connell didn't call the plays. Zach Taylor didn't call the plays. None of these guys called. Mike McDaniel didn't call the plays. So it's not the end of the world, but I would prefer. And when he gets here, I want him to call the plays. And I'll be mad if he doesn't call the plays because then it's like hiring Nick Sirianni. Texter says, I was rooting so hard for Detroit just to make sure the Titans couldn't hire Aaron Glenn this week. I'll say this. When it comes to the idea of, rooting or Aaron Glenn or whatever it may be, sitting there talking about, I was rooting so that they couldn't hire him this week. If they really wanted to hire him, like if they are convinced that Aaron Glenn is their guy, period, then they're going to wait, okay? Like, they're not going to sit back and say, well, we really wanted to hire him, but we want to make sure we get the staff in before the Senior Bowl, so forget about it, even though if he's their guy, he's their guy. Dustin says the Titans are not interviewing enough good offensive coordinators in the second round to give me faith. What if they don't get the one guy that they want? Do they want to get an OC when the only other one interviewed was from Carolina? That's why I'm scared to death and worried that the Titans will end up with a defensive coordinator as their head coach. Now, somebody sent in here and said, somebody sent in a tweet from Aaron Wilson, who's actually a pretty good insider, but I think he said something on the radio fired, but he actually does have some scoops, and he's in the Houston area. Said Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick was, quote, impressive, well-prepared, and thorough in his virtual interview with the Titans, according to a league source. The process is ongoing. I'm not going to get too excited until I see Bobby Slowick gets a second interview. If I see Bobby Slowick gets a second interview, I'll be the happiest guy in the world. But I can live with Callahan. I can't live with these defensive coaches. Texter says, what will you do if the Titans hire David Shaw? They won't. I'm not worried about it. Oof. Texter says, what if the reason that Ben Johnson is not interviewing for the Titans is that Aaron Glenn told him he's their guy? We can go through all these rabbit holes all we want about, well, what if they're, like, I'll give you an example of a conspiracy theory I've thought about when it comes to the Titans. The conspiracy theory I've thought is, what if they're interviewing Callahan to be the head coach, they're interviewing Thomas Brown to be the OC, but they're doing it in person because he's still under contract with the Panthers and because they have to have a second minority external candidate, so they do that. And they're interviewing Dan Quinn because they like what the Cowboys have done in developing guys like whether it's Micah Parsons or Trevon Diggs or Deron Bland or whomever. They like the way the Cowboys have done it, so they want to get to know Dan Quinn, who would be on his staff, and then they'll go hire somebody there. But again, that's just a conspiracy theory, and I'm not yet in the conspiracy theory mood. More of your phones at 615-737-1025. I promise we'll write to them. But there is one thing that freaking got in my craw over the weekend. I mean, it would be a guy that I would not be welcoming back if I were the Titans. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Realistically, need at least 25 yards. Love. Pressure up the middle. Runs away. Throws across his body. And that is picked. 49ers have it. Greenlaw. Still up. He needs to get down. Greenlaw still on his feet.
He's got to go down.
Just go down and the game's over. San Francisco.
Well, it's kind of fitting. Jordan Love told us this week, he goes, listen, there's some throws I've made that I know break kind of the cardinal rules of quarterback, and the one at the top of the list is you never throw the ball late back across the field.
There you go. That was the Jordan Love interception. And I saw that, and I was like, oh, my God, you idiot. Why'd you throw that pass? Now, Jordan Love played well, but that pass, and then the more I thought about it, the more I'm okay with it. Because everybody's like, well, it's just like going from Favre to Rodgers to Love. And I'm like, yep. And that was the Brett Favre experience right there with that interception. A ball he had no business throwing that he threw and got intercepted and cost you the playoffs. Brett Favre would be proud. Now, there's one thing I want to touch on. I promise I'm back to your phones. Did you guys see what Azeez Al-Shaair did this weekend? I'm not even thinking about Azeez Al-Shaair. Now, he's technically not under contract for next year, but he is technically under contract with the Titans right now. He was on the field in San Francisco with the San Francisco linebackers. There's a video of it, of them doing their kind of pregame breakdown, like it's the Arsenio Hall show or something. And he is in there in the middle of it, and I saw that, and I was like, he's not welcome back. And I knew, like, I felt in my, like, I knew that people were going to be like, I don't care. It shows the brotherhood that San Francisco has, and he's a part of that, and he's not on that team now. You can root for guys you know. You can be there in support at the game, but you can't be on the field doing team things with them. If you want to be there so bad, go there and stay there. But, I mean, first of all, I don't even think Azeez Al-Shaair is that good of a player as much as he led the team in tackles. Yeah, because there was nobody else to tackle somebody. Jack Gibbons. So I don't worry about that so much. But, again, I saw that yesterday, and I knew there were going to be people that were mad at me because it's like, he's just having fun, Jared. It's like, no. No, I want people on my team that are embarrassed to lose. They would be embarrassed to be on that field doing that with a team that they're not a part of. Aaron Rodgers wasn't on the other sideline saying, oh, no, these are my guys with the Packers. I mean, I got to be here to support my guys. No, I didn't see that from Aaron Rodgers. So, no, I am done with Azeez Al-Shaair after that. He is not welcome back. And if they bring him back, they're as big a losers as he is. Gosh, what a loser. What a loser mentality. Go down on the field and hang out with my guys. You should be embarrassed. Your team sucks. Your team got the coach fired. You should be embarrassed. Not down there like, oh, yeah, I'm with my guys. Ugh, get him out of here. Cedric is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling. What's up, Cedric?
Man, what's up, dog? Listen, let's go back in time a little bit, Jared. I called you some years ago, and I said that the Titans should trade for Matthew Stafford. And you said, absolutely not, Stafford sucks. And then I talked to you, man, a couple of years later. Dude, this is when he was with the Lions, man. You like, absolutely not, he sucks, you didn't want it. Then I said, well, what about David Carr? Should we trade for that? He said, absolutely not. He sucks. The quarterback's coach for those guys was Brian Callahan. Callahan cannot keep Joe Burrow healthy. He can't. 2 years in 2 of the 4 years Burrow's been there, Burrow has been knocked out for the season. His schemes get his quarterbacks killed. Papa Shanahan can't keep those guys up. They went through 4 quarterbacks this year. Okay?
It's not his scheme.
It's his blockers. What are you talking about? It's his blockers, man. Go get me a guy who has coached with Sean Payton. Go get me a guy that's played for Parcells. Go get me a guy that's helped build a culture up there in Detroit. Get me a guy who understands the importance of collaboration and the vision with the GM.
You don't believe anything
owner.
you're saying, do you? Because you came on Friday and you scared all of us with that Aaron Glenn cut from his Lions press conference. It sounded exactly like something Rand or Amy would say. And I did not take that. I took that as I'm warning you that Aaron Glenn might be the coach, not as Aaron Glenn's going to be the coach.
No, that's what I'm saying. Go get me a guy who
So you
understands
want Aaron
how
Glenn to be the coach?
Absolutely, I want Aaron Glenn to be the coach, man.
Cedric!
I'm going to call you tomorrow, and I'm going to break down why Aaron Glenn is the right guy for this job, man. Aaron Glenn is going to take us to the promised land, dog. Look that right now if they hire him, dog. I'm out, Jared, man. But listen, dog, I love you, man. And great stuff with Floyd, though. I brought back memories, bro. I'm out.
Oh, my God. That's the first person I've ever met that wants Aaron Glenn to be the next coach of the Titans. Cedric. Cedric probably wants Azeez Al-Shaair back as well. I texted somebody yesterday who's in football, and I was like, am I wrong for how much that Azeez thing bothered me? And they were basically like, no, but people are going to be mad when you feel that way. Oof. Drove me crazy. Ugh. Aaron Glenn. He wants Aaron Glenn. He's the only person in the world, Cedric is, that I know that wants Aaron Glenn. And again, it's nothing against Aaron Glenn. I mean, Aaron Glenn was a great player. I watched his press conference on Thursday. And I think that if this were 5-6 years ago and I was a believer in the leader of men coaches as a thing that mattered, then I would say, yes, Aaron Glenn would be a fit, right? Comes from a winning program. He's got a ton of experience. He clearly can lead the players well. He's aggressive, which I do like, even though I thought it was stupid to blitz on 4th and 15. I mean, there's a lot of things about Aaron Glenn that I'm okay with. But this isn't 6 years ago. The only way to dig this team out of the freaking hole it is in is to hope that the quarterback makes it. And the way to help the quarterback is to get him the young guru coach. That is the only way in order to do that. And so, I mean, I look at Matt LaFleur. I don't like Matt LaFleur. I think Matt LaFleur is a dope. I think Matt LaFleur doesn't do anything with defense or special teams. I think Matt LaFleur can't manage the clock. He can't count. Blew an NFC title game where they were down by 8 and he kicked a field goal and never got the ball back. I mean, I cannot stand him. But in today's NFL, developing the quarterback is kind of the thing, right? And you got to say, I mean, even me, a Matt LaFleur hater, I have to admit, that where Jordan Love was 2 years ago, where Jordan Love was at the beginning of this year, and where Jordan Love is now, that is a tribute to the guy, a testament to the guy that is in charge of coaching him. And that guy's Matt LaFleur, who's a guru. I need a guru. So it's nothing, Gentry Estes is over here just minding his own business or whatever. And he was talking to me during the break about, if they're going to go defense, they should go McDonald. I don't care. I don't even want to have the discussion of who the best defensive coach is because I'm not interested in any of the defensive coaches. And quite frankly, I think it is complete and total crazy talk to think that the Titans, who the only thing they have is a young quarterback who we don't even know if he's going to be good, would be even thinking about a defensive coach in today's era. One texter says, no to any of the defensive coaching candidates. Give me an exciting young offensive guy that can develop Levis. That's it. I mean, I feel bad for the Chicago Bears. They're already going to ruin Caleb Williams before he does it for himself. Unbelievable. Barry Trotz will join us next as the Predators get set to take on Florida tonight. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here on a Monday. The Predators, where we're live at Bridgestone Arena, are getting set to take on the Florida Panthers tonight. And because of that, we move it up a day. Barry Trotz joins us, Predators General Manager, presented by Gary Force Acura. So a big night, before we get to the game, a big night where your team, the first Predators team, is being honored tonight. That must be pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. All the OGs, I got to see them.
You might be a little too old to say that.
Yeah, maybe, you think?
Yeah,
well, I'm young at heart.
There you go.
So you got to live with that. But it was good to see them. You think about the franchise where it's come. A couple guys haven't been back here for, since the time they played here, and they can't believe how the franchise has grown, how the city has grown. And they followed us. Obviously, they're a big part of what we tried to start way back in '98, and it's good to have them back. They're going to have some fun memories. The early teams, the one thing about the early teams, there wasn't a lot of talent, but, man, there was a lot of drive. There was a lot of push. There was, they gave you every ounce because they didn't know. It's like the replacements. You never knew how long you're going to be in the league for a lot of those guys, and some guys, and most of them, ended up having pretty good careers. So it was pretty cool.
So let's get to this road trip. This was very frustrating for me as a fan for a couple of reasons.
Should be my spot.
I know exactly. The first is the time of the games. We were all snowed in last week, and so the first game is on Monday while the football games are going on. So then on Tuesday, there's not a game, so we're just sitting there like, where's the game? Then on Thursday, you guys don't play until 9 o'clock out there in L.A., where you end up getting the win. And then on Saturday, you guys played. And what was frustrating about Saturday was, quite frankly, I knew how big of a game it was. Just from a standing standpoint, everything else. And the first 4 minutes of that game, I felt like Predators going to walk in there and win this game 3-0. It was, I want to say the shot count after the first power play was like 7-0, 8-0. I was like, okay, they're going to end up putting one in. And yet, first game against Vegas, thought you played well enough to win and you didn't. Then the game against Arizona, it was as soon as those pucks go in the net, all of a sudden you're chasing the game the rest of the way against Arizona. Very frustrating to get no points out of both the Vegas game and the Arizona game. Let's talk about your position in that. How'd you feel about it?
Well, I can talk both ways. I was surprised how we came out in the Vegas game. We were almost a perfect first period, and we're down 1-0. My concern going to Vegas is that we were going to play. We had two big games. We started out in Dallas, came back home back to back. We got on a plane and went out to Vegas, and now you're playing Vegas, and they're in a real big game. So I didn't think we were going to have the energy that we did, and came out really well. Almost played the perfect first period. And you're down 1-0, and now you're chasing it. Exactly what you're talking about. We never could find our secondary scoring. I thought then we went to L.A., huge game, and I thought we found a way to win. That's a good hockey team that was very, very desperate. We found a way to win, which was fantastic. I thought we had everybody through our lineup contributing, and that's how we're going to win. I thought Saros was outstanding. And then we went to Arizona, and I thought that was a game where it's a tough atmosphere, even though it's not a big rink.
It's like playing at Ford Ice Center.
It is. It doesn't feel like the National Hockey League, unfortunately, and I don't know if that plays into it. It shouldn't. But we came out really well. I had the same thoughts. We're up, 6, 7, 8 shots. We're really moving the puck. First power play was excellent, and we don't score. And then they sort of get their feet under them. And I've coached many games where you come out flying and something goes awry, or a loose puck, or someone comes out of the penalty box at the wrong time and they score, and sort of changes the momentum. I thought what frustrated me in the Arizona game more than anything is I thought, our big line has been pushing and doing everything we've asked of them. But the secondary group of players, the players after the I want to say the O'Reilly line. Yeah. And, those guys didn't contribute the way I would like to see them. I didn't think their push, their desire, all those things that can give you an edge against, especially in a big game, they didn't elevate it to the level that I thought they should. And like I said in the LA game, I felt we got contributions right through the lineup, even if you didn't score. I didn't feel the same way in Arizona. I thought our big guys did what they could. Our secondary guys didn't pull their weight. So a couple things that I thought happened too. Momentum. I thought up front, the hit on our response when Dumba ran over Novak in the neutral zone, and then he ran someone in the corner, and we didn't have much of a response. That really made me angry. So we'll get that fixed up.
So one thing that I guess I looked at and I felt a little bit, again, frustrating me, but I really want your opinion on this, is that the lineup changes that were made for Saturday. Tyson Berry goes into the lineup. Cody Glass goes into the lineup. You know, some of these guys that have been scratched a little bit lately, they go in there. And to your point, I didn't feel like they played well enough to justify replacing the guys that they were replacing from the way that the team played Thursday.
Yeah, I'm not any decision that's made in terms of lineup, I'm not in the dressing room like you aren't, or a fan or anybody, and you can make your comments on those type of things. I think the coaching staff, I sit down there and I listen, and they're pretty thorough, and they think, hey, this guy's been sort of sliding. We need to get him going, and I think Sherwood going in can give us energy, and this guy going in could help us. This guy's is slipped the last couple of games, and so they were looking for some energy, a new life, if you will.
I was kind of thinking that maybe some of the guys, like, they were giving a rest to, and then wanting these other guys not to get stale just by sitting out the whole time.
Well,
I still want it,
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, I know what you're saying.
Sure.
If Tyson's not playing, here's a guy that's played 799 games. I mean, he should be able to bring something. If it's a little more offense, or having trouble scoring, whatever, that's where that's his game. So the coaches really think about that. We've been struggling to score last little while, so a lot of that was secondary power play. Tyson should be motivated coming back, that type of thing. Might be a little bit rusty, but usually guys can get through the first game just on adrenaline a little bit. And, so anyways, there's lots of decisions, and they're always made. I said, whatever decisions the coaching staff makes, it's the right decision, because they have all the knowledge. They have all the time with the players. You don't know some underlying things when guys are banged up, when guys are sick like I am, as you can tell in my voice. You don't know all those things if you're not with them every day. So, and they're trying to send some messages to some players to keep them motivated or keep them in the group. So, unfortunately, we didn't get the win there. But if there's anything that I think that's been a little bit part of it, we've beaten some very good teams that are ahead of us.
Sure.
The teams that we want to get some separation behind us, we haven't done a good job. And also our home record. Those are two areas that, if we can fix that up a little bit, we'll beat the teams that are behind us, push them back, and get our home record on the right side, on a better side, I should say, than it is right now. Those two things will really add up to give us a really good chance.
Barry Trotz is brought to you by Gary Force Acura. He's with us right now. What is keeping this team, in your opinion, from being able to go, and I know you did right before the end of the year, but to go on one of those heaters that would really give you some space from the rest of the pack that's fighting for those wild card spots right now?
That's an easy one. You're going to need great goaltending, and you need contributions to your whole lineup. Look at the Edmonton Oilers, just set a record for the best record of any Canadian team in the history of the NHL. And you think about the great Canadian teams and the Oilers teams that they had, and what's happening in Edmonton is their top players are playing, but they're getting contributions to their whole lineup. They're playing good defensively, and they're getting great goaltending. And if you're able to do that, you can go on a heater in this league. But it's tough. You're going to have to get to go on a heater. You're going to have to steal a game that you really don't deserve, because teams are so good in this league. And we did one earlier. We were 5-10 at one point, and then all of a sudden we're 4 games over 500. So.
Well, I got off the bandwagon, and then you guys got on a heater.
Yeah, we forced you back.
And then I got back on the bandwagon, and now it's kind of stagnant a little bit.
Yeah, you're either in or you're out. That's that's where you are. But I understand totally. And this is a tough league, and this is going to be everybody's a race to the All-Star game. Once you get past the All-Star game, it's a playoff game every night, and it gets tougher to score. It gets tougher to get points night in and night out. The one thing that we've been able to do is not go on too many big slides. But at the same time, we've only gone on one heater. We're going to need another one before the end of the year for sure.
Where are you right now in terms, I know that, again, it's the All-Star break and then trade season kind of heats up a little bit. Where are you? I know people are looking for defensemen out there. I know you got them. I know you got cap space, which other teams don't have. Kind of where are we right now in maybe the beginning of potential trade discussions?
Well, I think most general managers, and I spent the whole time on this last trip phoning different general managers. They've been doing the same thing, but I'd be ready to do something, and they're not because they don't have cap space. It's one of those things. So it's trying to find the right fit. I think we're gonna be able to do a couple things at the trade deadline. People are asking, are you a buyer or a seller? And I can't really tell them yet. I think my best answer is always the players always let you know if you're a buyer or seller, based on play and also based on where they are in terms of the standings. And if they get on one of these heaters, I'm gonna supply them with something for sure. But if we don't, and we're just meddling and are going to get in, then I probably will move some pieces for some assets. And we've got some good people in the minors. Our farm team in Milwaukee's in first place. They're probably the youngest team in the American Hockey League. They're in first place. And there's some guys that are I would say, due for a look-see. And we'll probably do that in the second half if we can.
So when I'm looking at some of these teams, Barry, in the NFL, right? Like there are teams that in October or in even November that were struggling or they were going through ruts or they fired the coach and then they get hot and they get into the playoffs and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, in December they had a 5% chance of making it. Here they are in the playoffs. Knowing that peaking at the right time is so important, how do you go about looking at your team saying, okay, if we don't feel like we're a contender, I'm going to do this, or if knowing that you've got a team that could do something if all the pieces hit at the right time?
Well, I think there's a number of teams that can do that if you hit at the right time. I think every team, I've had some teams that you say, man, this team has all the talent, but we're not playing well. And as a coach, you go, you got to try to turn them around. We got to create something because we have the pieces. I think we can go deep, but internally, that you're not playing really good hockey. And I always say the teams that are get on those heaters, especially in the last 20 games and are playing playoff hockey. The team we're playing tonight, Florida, was an example. I mean, you look at last year, there was a scenario where I think the Islanders were playing Chicago and they lost. And then Pittsburgh was playing Chicago and they lost. Both those teams, the Islanders could have been, Florida would have been out. Pittsburgh and the Islanders would have been in, but because they both lost, Florida got in. Mm-hmm. I think they beat Toronto or something like that, one of the last games. They got in, and then they went really, really deep because number one, they have a good team. Two, they were playing playoff hockey for about 20 games, and they were catching teams that weren't playing playoff hockey. I had a team in Washington a few years. We were President's Trophy team. We hadn't played a meaningful game in about 2 months, and it was hard for us to go deep. Mm-hmm. I think we lost in the second round to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh went on to the Stanley Cup here in Nashville. So I've been there, and it's about peaking at the right time. It's about playing meaningful games down the stretch, and I think we'll be, playing meaningful games down the stretch. So if we're doing really well and it hits trade deadline, I'll try to add a piece or two.
Last one for you. This time of the year, you guys are home for one, and then you go back out on the road. Is there a fear of this team maybe plateauing a little bit or getting stale or just the constant just turn of the road trips? You have a long road trip, you come back, you go on another long road trip. Is there a fear of that?
No, I don't think so. I think the group is very professional. We're led by some great leaders. I don't have that fear at all. Our coaching staff prepares our guys. It's just going to be if we win. We've been good on the road. I'm just hoping we're continuing to be pretty good on the road. When we come home, we've got to get some meaningful points at home. If we can do that, we'll be fine. I think the days of big home ice advantage, there's only a few clubs that I think have a big home ice advantage just because of their situation, certain buildings, but all the buildings are pretty generic.
You mean like Arizona's?
Like Arizona's. It is an advantage to them, even though it's a
I heard
it's
Willie
a
say
college.
today, he was like, Barry Trotz thinks that that's a big advantage.
I think it is because the mindset, if you go there, it's let's call it what it is. It's not NHL.
It looked on TV kind of like, remember when we went out to Clarksville?
Yeah.
At the new building out there, out in Clarksville,
Yeah.
that's, again, like it's a great building for Clarksville.
Yes.
And that's what it looked like on TV to me. I wasn't there. I've never been there.
No, they have a really good atmosphere. They've done a good job, but let's call it what it is. It's not. It's a small venue, and you're right. It feels a little bit like an exhibition game when you go there for the visiting team, and they're used to it. I played in the old Coliseum in Long Island, and trust me, it was a big advantage. It's an old building. It was everybody stayed at the old Marriott across the rink. Players they couldn't wait to get out of there. And I'm talking about the visiting team.
Mm-hmm.
And they hate playing in that rink. They hate playing or going to that hotel and the atmosphere. But it was a great atmosphere for us, and it felt like a really big advantage for us being on the island. And we took advantage of it. Our home record was outstanding, and it was, A, we had a good team, but B, it was the old building. Everything's dark and dirty and dungy and all that. Now the buildings are pretty generic, so it's a little different.
Well, then tell them to make this place terrible. And then
No way,
right
not a
there.
chance. This
There
is
you
an awesome
go.
building.
Barry Trotz, congratulations, by the way, on welcoming back the 1998 team. That must be a lot of fun for you today. Good luck this week, and get better.
Yeah, thank you.
I can hear it in your voice. That must have been a very long road trip out there, tons of germs, everything else. Good luck this week.
All right, thank you.
Barry Trotz joining us, as always, presented by Gary Force Acura. Stillman & Company, we continue. 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
The truth is, I mean, the risk is the same from the standpoint you still have to go out and find a good head coach someplace.
Right, but if you're 3-20, it's probably easier to find a better coach than a 3-20 coach than it is to find a guy who got you to the playoffs for the first time in a decade.
Well, yeah, but no, you're missing my point. The point is you're going out trying to find somebody that's going to lead you to the Super Bowl. So whether you fire a guy that just won 10 games or a guy that won 0 games, you're still looking for that same guy. They see the Rams come in here with Goff, throwing the ball up and down the field, and that's what they want. That's the kind of system they want. Well, Goff is at home right now. And all of these other guys with the systems, except for Brady, all 3 other teams in the playoffs are doing exactly what we want to do. And that's 3 out of 4 teams in the playoffs. So in spite of what the fans think and in spite of what the fans want, at least this year, the surest way to win and to have a chance to be a world champ is to do what we're trying to do.
That was Floyd 6 years ago on the then Jared and the GM program. And I was listening back to it this weekend, just again, Floyd's probably the closest person I've ever had in my life that has passed away. And I was just listening to that, from 6 years ago, not to reminisce about, the times we used to have on the radio, but to really think about what he said then and how does it apply now. And that one right there really hit me. I sent out a tweet on Saturday. Ian, did you see the tweet I sent out Saturday about this?
I don't think so.
So I sent out a tweet, and I said I was listening to old Jared and the GM, from 6 years ago to get Floyd's insight, and that I thought that show would have been a much better show if Jared had just shut up and let Floyd talk, and instead of he would say something, and then I would try to, give my opinion or say what I think or what, and it's like, no, just ask a better follow-up question. And then so I said it would be a much better show if Jared would just shut up and let the old man talk, and a lot of people had a lot of fun with that. But there is a lot of truth to that. And that one hit me right there, where I was all bent out of shape about, Mike Mularkey won, and they fired him, and whatever, and now you got to make sure you get a good coach or else people get mad. And he's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you fire some crap bum coach who's no good, or if you fire a coach that's good, but you feel like there's more juice in that orange and you want to get it out. The goal is the same. And it sounds so simple, right? Which is go find a coach that you think you can win the Super Bowl with. And the reason I bring that up and I played that cut is because it made me think about Mike Vrabel and the predicament the Titans are in right now. I think with Mike Vrabel, there was probably a chance that they sat there and they said, you know what? We can't win the Super Bowl this way. We can't win the Super Bowl with a coach who every year it's going to be an adventure on the offensive end, right? Who do you like at offensive coordinator? Well, we don't know about this guy, with a coach who doesn't know how to find a line coach. And while that way used to work, and that way was successful with this team when the team was built well and everything, just aligned, right? Arthur was a great coordinator and play caller, and it fit with Tannehill. And Derrick Henry was in his prime. It was the best running back in the NFL. And A.J. Brown was coming along. And Jonnu Smith and when Corey Davis were in career years, or contract years, so they played their best. And all that happened at the same time. And everything possible would have to go right. And it's like, can you win the Super Bowl that way? So everybody around here is always like, oh, man, this, and I say around here, everybody in the NFL is like, oh, man, Mike Vrabel, how could you fire that guy? How could you? And it's like, could you win the Super Bowl that way? And I kind of think in today's game, the answer is no. And then that takes me to this coaching search right now. And again, I don't want to knock Dan Quinn for one game that was atrocious against the Packers. And I don't want to knock him for 28-3 in the Super Bowl, because if you can promise me, if Dan Quinn's the head coach of the Titans, that you'll be up 28-3 in a Super Bowl for him to blow it, I'd like to take the chance to see if he can hold on to that lead and not blow it. But I can't envision the Titans winning the Super Bowl with Dan Quinn as the coach. I can't envision the Titans with a defensive coach turning Will Levis into what it would have to happen, like what they would need to build him into in order to win the Super Bowl. I don't see it. And I've been thinking about that ever since I listened to that those old Jared and the GM cuts. And I've been thinking about how do they go about finding a coach that doesn't just have them competing this weekend, but has them competing for the Super Bowl. And right now, the only thing I can come up with is somebody who gives the quarterback the best chance to be successful. And I just don't know, in today's current NFL, where the second an offensive coordinator shows success, he gets picked up to be a head coach. I just don't know if it's feasible to be able to do that with the defensive coordinator. Bobby Slowick, I think, is a good example of this. Bobby Slowick has been interviewed by pretty much every team, it feels like, right? Well, who thought this time last year that the Texans' offensive coordinator was going to be a hot candidate? But what happened? They showed progress with the quarterback teams, and even if he doesn't go this year, he'll go next year. And then they'll have to get somebody else for Stroud. Going to take the Falcons job, and the guy that you got was terrible. So that one cut right there about, hey, this is about trying to do what wins in today's NFL. What wins in today's NFL is the guru coach. Shanahan, guru coach. Andy Reid, guru coach. And the two other teams that are still playing have two of the most well-respected offensive coordinators in the NFL. Ben Johnson, who a lot of people think is a guru coach, and then Todd Monken, who has done wonders with Lamar Jackson. The Eagles were the talk after they made the Super Bowl last year. You wanted to be like the Eagles, right? They lost the guru offensive coordinator. They went downhill. So I just keep circling back, whether it's Callahan, whether it's Slowick, whether it's whomever. It's the guru coach that this team and franchise has to have if they want to try to build a Super Bowl winner around Will Levis. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Coming up next, I got a bunch of thoughts from the divisional round, a lot of which kind of relate to the Titans, or at least one thing I can't do is I can't watch these games without putting myself or putting the Titans into the discussion as to what this team does that the Titans don't do, where this team is going that the Titans aren't going, or what. And so I want to get to that. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3, The Game here on our program, MTSU Basketball. What did I tell you about MTSU Basketball? That's right. They are back in action coming up on Wednesday night. The Blue Raiders are on 93.3 Classic Hits at home, taking on Jacksonville State. Pregame is at 6. Tip-off is at 6:30. And coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. And I'm in a good mood. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets before you can buy them to see Billy Currington and Kip Moore, who is a good man, I might add, at Ascend Amphitheater on Saturday, May 18th. Tickets on sale this Friday at 10 a.m. Good luck with that. Stillman and Company, live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5-106.3 The Game.
I envisioned that we would have a chance to compete with the big boys, and that's where we're at. All you got to do is get in, and it's about placing yourself the very best position to where you can move. You get a home game, and then maybe you get a second home game, and now all of a sudden it gets a little easier, you know? If you're able to get a 1 seed, you only got to win 2 games, right? And so that's always the objective.
There you go. That was Dan Campbell. That's right, Coach Kneecap. And they have Detroit in the NFC title game. I got to give credit to Dan Campbell. I thought this guy was crazy when he had them doing up-downs at training camp. Then I was impressed by him, the way they turned it around last year, but at training camp, you know, everybody was talking about the Lions. They were kind of the team of the offseason and everything else, and he was like, we haven't done anything yet. We didn't even make the playoffs last year. And I was like, good. Coach is trying to keep them grounded because it's hard when you get all that, you know, Nick Saban used to call it rat poison. When you get all that rat poison in there, it's hard to keep it that way. But this is it for the Detroit Lions. I want you guys, and I like Dan Campbell fine. I don't want him to be my head coach, but I like him fine. But this is the shot. This is the Titans 2021 season, right? Like, this is the defense is good enough. In 2019, the Titans' defense probably wasn't good enough to win the Super Bowl because they had a bunch of these crap bums like Tremaine Brock Sr. out there. So, like, you know, they were paper clipping and gumming it together. In 2020, the defense was abysmal. But in 2021, Bud Dupree was healthy. Danico Autry was on the team. Harold Landry hadn't torn his ACL. Like, they were legit on defense. Byard was still young. Hooker didn't get hurt. Like, they were legit. A.J. Brown had truly emerged as a stud. Derrick Henry was coming back off the injury before he broke his leg, or his foot. He was carrying this team past the Chiefs, past the Bills, past the Colts, whatever. And then it all ends. And I look at the Lions, and I'm like, this is their shot. I don't think they're going to beat San Francisco. But after this year, they're going to lose the offensive coordinator and probably the defensive coordinator. They are absolutely losing the offensive coordinator. Well, remember how big of a step back the Titans took when Arthur Smith left and they put Todd Downing in there. So Dan Campbell has to hit it out of the park because Jared Goff, and I like Jared Goff more than everybody else did when they thought he was a bum, but Jared Goff needs good coaching. Then there's the money. I have no idea if the Ford family is rich or not, but here's why this is important. Because Amon-Ra St. Brown and Penei Sewell are going to need new top-of-the-market contracts. Like, we're talking $28 million a year for Amon-Ra St. Brown and probably $20 million a year for Penei Sewell. Jared Goff is going to need a new contract that'll probably pay him around $50 million a year. And with these contracts, because of the signing bonus, a lot of this money gets paid up front. So we're talking about with Amon-Ra St. Brown probably $30 million in the first year, with Penei Sewell $25 million in the first year, with Goff probably about $60 million in the first year. So now we're at over $100 million for 3 guys. Then they're going to have to pay Aiden Hutchinson when he's getting ready to come due because he's a star. And they're going to have to get a new offensive coordinator in there, and they're going to have to, you see what I'm saying? Whereas like Kansas City, I know Kansas City will get back after this year. Why? They got Mahomes. And they got Maotto. They'll be back. I know San Francisco will be back. Why? Because it doesn't matter who plays quarterback for Kyle Shanahan. It could be Matt Ryan, and they're good. It could be Jimmy Garoppolo, who I cannot stand, and they're good. It can be Brock Purdy. And let me say this. The amount of people, Twitter this weekend was one of these places where I see people saying things, and I'm like, I'm not sure that you and I watched the same game. Twitter was like, if you had any doubts about Brock Purdy, you shouldn't anymore. I'm like, what? Brock, I'm sorry, what? He played like Brady. I didn't even think Brock Purdy was that good. Doesn't matter. Shanahan will always be, they'll be good again, but it's like the Buccaneers. Mike Evans is a free agent. Baker Mayfield's a free agent. Dave Canales might get a job. It's hard for me to envision the Buccaneers being back there and Todd Bowles building something that is consistent. It is not hard for me to envision that with the Ravens. It is not hard for me to envision that with Shanahan, and it is not hard for me to envision that with Andy Reid. So if you're on the Lions bandwagon, just know, like, this is the shot. And I know that this is the shot because I've seen it, where my team has the shot, and the window, it closes faster than you think. It just shuts right on your hands for one reason or another. So this is a shot for the Lions here. Now, I do want to touch this on the Ravens, which is, I don't know if it is Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator, that has transformed that team. If it is great drafting, all kind of evolving at one time. You know, Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum and all the Justin Madubuike and all these guys they drafted all at one time, all kind of popping at the same time. And I don't know how much of this is just Lamar Jackson decided he wanted to play football. Because last year, Lamar with his contract, it was a story. And then the offseason, Lamar and his contract, it was a story. And then finally, with all the media reports and all the speculation and Lamar demanding a trade and the Ravens not giving him the exclusive franchise tag, but instead giving him the non-exclusive franchise tag, all those things happened. And in the end, it doesn't matter. And I've been thinking about that when it comes to A.J. Brown, which was the Titans gave in to the temper tantrum. A.J. threw the tantrum, saying he wasn't going to show up. Okay, Nick Bosa didn't show up. They're fine. Deebo Samuel did the exact same thing in San Francisco that A.J. Brown did here, and the 49ers, a confident, non-reactive organization, just crossed their arms and said, okay. Deebo wanted a trade. Deebo wanted to be paid more because he was used as a wide receiver and a running back. Deebo wanted all these things. They didn't care. They said, we'll be fine. We'll get a deal. It'll be okay. Meanwhile, the Titans had Jim Wyatt writing his own article about how they want to keep AJ. But they didn't have to do that. They just should have done what Baltimore did. They should have done what San Francisco did and just said, we hold all the cards. Remember, this time last year, Lamar was not playing at the end of the season. Tyler Huntley played a playoff game. Lamar Jackson demanded a trade. Lamar Jackson was given the non-exclusive franchise tag, which means any team could have talked to him. But the Ravens always had their ace in the hole, which was they could match any contract offer. They had their ace in the hole, which is we have the money and we're the only team that can give it to you. And I just, again, I put the Titans, myself and the Titans into all these situations. I'm like, would they have reacted that way with Lamar? Because they didn't react that way with AJ when AJ and Deebo were doing the same thing. By the way, I am not a Brock Purdy guy. I feel bad for Shanahan. He wants a good quarterback so bad. I saw a headline today. I didn't read what he said, but apparently Brock Purdy came out and said that in 2023, the 49ers wanted to pivot off of him and onto Tom Brady. And I'm like, wow, that would have been freaking wild. Shanahan keeps winning with all these nobodies at quarterback. I almost wonder what they could do with a Will Levis. I was not impressed with Brock Purdy the other night. And then when it comes to Green Bay, when it comes to Green Bay and Tampa Bay, two of the teams that lost, and they're the two of the teams that lost that kind of get left out of the discussion. Because everybody wants to talk about the Lions. Everybody wants to talk about Mahomes. Everybody wants to talk about Buffalo coming up short again. But as much as we kind of forget about Tampa Bay and we forget about Green Bay, I think it's important to notice that in the case of Green Bay, they think they've got their quarterback, and the infrastructure around the quarterback with the coach and the offensive staff and everything else, that's not going to change. So if they feel comfortable, the same guys that picked him out, the same guys that brought him along slowly, the same guys that survived that Malik Willis-like performance against the Chiefs in 2021, the same guys that stuck with him early in the season when it didn't look like he was going to be an elite quarterback, are the same guys that now say, hey, we've done the work. We know this guy's going to be special, and he looks the part. I feel positive about that. Tampa Bay, meanwhile, with Baker, who knows? Are they going to pay Baker? Are they going to keep Mike Evans? Are they going to be able to keep Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator, who kind of resurrected Baker this year? And we talk about Will Levis and about what we think Will Levis can be. Will Levis went in the second round. Baker Mayfield was the number 1 overall pick. Baker's got talent. Baker, to me, is a lot of what the cautionary tale would be if you ruin Will Levis. Baker was Rookie of the Year. Baker's got a good arm. Baker's tough. Baker understands the game. Baker is fearless. Baker's willing to play hurt. All the things Will Levis is. But too often, he's been saddled with a Freddie Kitchens, or he's unreal expectations with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, an overreactive owner in both Cleveland and Carolina. And finally, under the radar with a solid coach and receivers, Baker's kind of settled in. But it's too late for him to become an elite quarterback. So that's kind of a cautionary tale there. So that's kind of my thoughts on the divisional round and how I kept thinking about the Titans when I was watching all of that. Twice Daily. I absolutely love Twice Daily. They want to send you to Italy. Visit twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more info. Buy any made-to-order Italian sub and use your rewards app to get entered to win. Every sub is a chance to win. Mobile-ordered Italian subs count 2 times as entries. Again, visit twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more info. Twice Daily has you covered with made-to-order selections for breakfast, lunch, and everything in between. Download the Twice Daily app and join their loyalty program to unlock special discount savings and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily. You'll earn points and save money with every visit. Get what you crave at Twice Daily. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. List your home with TJ and get your house seen, heard, and sold. Tonight, it's a biggin' for the Predators as they take on the Florida Panthers. Florida 27-14-4, good for 58 points. The defending Eastern Conference champions, the Predators, are 25-20-1, good for 51 points. Tough loss for the Predators on Saturday, which really, really hurt them as far as the standings chase is concerned. They now are in that second wild card spot, and Arizona, who they lost to on Saturday, is just a nipping on their heels. Max Hers has you at the pregame show. That is next. Stillman and company. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll see you all tomorrow at 2.